Looky there. That's the fastest intro
Hello,
ever.
hello.
Welcome to Cause I Wanna.
That
Hello.
was way too fast.
I'm like, this shit starts way faster than anything else we've ever done. Hey, I'm Matt Dillahunty, and joining me is my friend from Eve Was Framed, or otherwise known Eve
That's
Was
me.
Framed. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
apart from
Apart
your
from I've
weird
had like
cough.
some cold allergy thing happening. Yeah, so I apologize ahead of time, everybody. I'm going to be muting myself all the time. But yeah, aside from that, I'm doing good. We finally got our album submitted, so that's coming out. Now I can like take a breather and focus on the fact that this election is going on, which is
There's an
the whole
election?
thing. I was just right. I was just watching live Trump campaigning in Pennsylvania, which was as fascinating as you can
Well,
imagine.
I didn't get to watch it. I was working on some other things. We actually finished up a new enclosure, or first stage of a new enclosure. There's always tweaks and stuff you do for our false water cobra, and so I got it done and posted a picture. But yeah, let me just run through a couple things. Welcome to the line. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We have something going on here live almost every stinking day now, which is great because the Sunday show at 2, then we do the Sunday show after dark. And then on Mondays it's Skeptalk, and Tuesdays it's Chewed Gum, Wednesdays is the Hang Up, Thursdays is Transatlantic Call-In Show, Fridays and Saturdays, at least through the election, we're doing these Cause I Wanna shows. And because of that, there are shows with different focus. So on Monday, you have Skeptalk. We will always, or seemingly almost always, take calls from people advocating for religion, religious views, the supernatural, anything like that. It doesn't have to merely be about politics and political stance. That's one of the cornerstones of the network. But on Monday, Skeptalk is a great opportunity to call in and talk about things to be skeptical about, things to, attempt to prove that aren't necessarily tied to religion. Maybe it's UFOs, maybe it's cryptids, but we could deal with other views there as well. Tuesdays, Chewed Gum, hosted by Eve and Alyssa. This is this is women talking about purity culture and all of the various harms that religion have done. But also, you've got Alyssa, who's a sex coach.
She's amazing. Yeah.
And so you can get some questions in on some other stuff. If there's something that's been bugging you, if you're trying to get rid of some of your religious baggage. By the way, we always recommend you can reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org and seculartherapy.org to find a therapist to help get through this stuff. Wednesdays is my show, The Hang Up, which is basically I get to talk about whatever the hell I want. Now, quite frankly, most of the time it ends up being about political positions and things like that. But it could be, I've had episodes. Some of it depends on who's going to be on with me as a co-host, because I try to either pick the co-host for the issue that I'm focused on, or I tailor the issue that I'm hung up on for the co-host. And so anything that might have been happening in the news, but getting calls and feedback. And we do a lot of talk about religion. On Thursdays, it's a Transatlantic Call-In Show. And that's the time to call in and talk to and learn from 2 actual real live trans people about their lived experience. Ask all the dumb questions that you want. If you are transphobic or anti-trans or anything like that, like if you're a Trump supporter because Trump is anti-trans, which he absolutely is, you can call in and explain why, and they'll tell you, why they disagree or why you're wrong or why you're awful or whatever it is. That's the perfect opportunity for that. On these shows on Friday and Saturday, first of all, sorry to anybody who thinks this is mean. But we've had some people who seem to be confused. There are some people who seem to want desperately to be co-hosts on one of the shows. And they think that if they just call in and say the right thing, we'll be like, oh my God, you should be a co-host on one of the shows. And that's probably never going to happen. We're also not looking for people who agree with us. And we're not looking to have, in-depth conversations where somebody calls in to present their viewpoint on something that we're already on board with. The primary focus for these Cause I Want is right now, and we will still take calls advocating for religion or whatever else, but the primary focus of these Cause I Want is right now is to have conversations with Trump supporters, with third-party voters, and with people who don't want to vote. If you're already planning to vote for Harris, but you want to call in to say how disappointed you are in the left and disappointed you are in the Dems. And me too. I'm disappointed in the left. I'm disappointed in liberals. I'm disappointed in progressives. I'm disappointed with Democrats. I'm disappointed across the fucking board, but I'm still going to vote for the better world. I'm still going to make the vote and make the decisions that are best for us all, and lead to a better world. So, yeah, if you just want to call in and say, yes, I'm going to bite the bullet and vote for Harris, but I really wish she'd do this, and I really wish she'd do that. Yeah, don't call. Right. That does none of us any good. It's not the right thing. There was somebody who tried to call last night and was like, yo, I just wanted to give a shout out to the host. We don't need that. No, there's not a single host on here that is going to feel good about having you call in to give a shout out to us. We already know how good or awful we are. We already know how good or awful some of you think we are. And while we appreciate it, if this show was, one of the things that came up last night, there are ideas within moral frameworks that I like to espouse. One of them is the kind of think globally, but act locally. And then there's Rawls' veil of ignorance. Think about what kind of world you want, not knowing who you're going to be in it. But the other one is, imagine if everybody in the world took the action that you're about to take. How would that fundamentally change things? And if everybody in the world called in to just say, hey, the hosts are awesome, then the show would suck. The show would absolutely suck, and nobody would think that we're particularly awesome because it's just a flattery show. Yeah. Similarly, for those people who are advocating for, hey, I'm in a red state, so rather than voting blue, I'm going to vote third party. Because it's not going to make any difference. We already know who's going to win. Well, that's kind of true until you think about if everybody started using that justification, then all of a sudden you might actually turn a red state blue, turn a blue state red. If people decided to just vote willy-nilly, which you're free to do, you can vote your conscience however you want. But if you think that that's actually a viable path to something, you've got a terrible conceptual error about what's actually going to happen in a general election. So we will take questions tonight. We will debate. We will talk about who's going to be better on different issues. And if you call in and you're like, okay, my number one issue is I don't want trans people in the military, and my number two issue is I don't want anybody to be able to have an abortion, I will tell you that Donald Trump is the right candidate for you. If those are your two main positions, boom. Yeah. It's pretty easy.
Although I still feel like that's not a great idea, because what happens if you don't like a bunch of his other policies? He's going to stick you with everything anyways. And I don't know. I can't think of any good reasons to vote for Trump for anyone, even if you're like the worst person and you like terrible policies, because at the end of the day, he doesn't have anybody's best interest in mind except for his own. It's not like he's looking out for you because you share values with him. So even still, he could turn on you at any point and change because he now has this idea and this billionaire to make happy and this world leader that he wants to become, or world dictator that he wants to become friends with. So I don't know.
It's really wild because if you think about it, the people that he's most working for, the people that are going to benefit the most from him are other billionaires, other incredibly wealthy people who don't need it and are going to be fine no matter who gets elected.
Yep. Yeah. So, except for the ones who are like terrified of an ounce of regulation and accountability. Not as good for them, I guess, but oh man, it's painful. I was watching the campaign today. I mean, I think he's still going in Pennsylvania right now. I don't understand how
call-in studio shut down.
Uh-oh.
No, you got to refresh. We ran out of funds, but I just had Jimmy refresh it.
I've been refreshing.
Yeah, it just closed out for me too.
Oh. Fuck, yeah, okay.
Let's see. Sorry, guys. But I was saying I was watching Donald Trump and he's talking, and I don't know how anybody is watching him thinking, this is my guy. He's just rattling on these random stories that don't make any sense. He's describing the moment that Elon landed the rocket and he was on the phone with this guy and he made him wait on the phone for 45 minutes and he's a really important guy, and then he never picked up the phone again. And then now I'm talking about Elizabeth Warren and Pocahontas, and I made her go get her DNA checked, and all, just saying crazy things, weaving in and out of these bizarre stories that make no sense. also, why are we talking about Elizabeth Warren and Biden? That's who's also really laughable, is when he said that Kamala is more radical left than Bernie Sanders. Extra funny. He just doesn't, he's just saying random shit. And people are buying it. Really
so I'm answering this in chat, by the way. So it's like, call in studio ran out of funds. How does that work? So basically, the application that we use to take calls, we prepay for X amount of time. And because every show on the line is a call-in show, we go through it a lot. It's one of the reasons why it's so incredibly frustrating that we're dealing with a longer than normal delay, and we get trolls, because if there's a troll that sits on hold for 38 minutes just to spend 5 minutes on there being, doing baba booey, we still pay for it.
It costs us money, right?
Yeah.
And you guys can call back in now. If you called earlier, your call probably just got dropped. Give us a call back, and we'll get to those now. I think we've got it sorted.
Yeah.
And just a reminder,
queuing up callers now.
Yeah, what Matt is saying is, please don't call if you just want to tell us a story, or you want to agree with us, or you just want to say that we're doing a good or terrible job. Call in if you actually want to tell us why you're voting for Donald Trump or third party, or why you're not voting. And we'd love to talk to you about that specifically. Something where we're actually engaging in dialogue and not just letting you have a moment that we pay for.
So I have a question for you, just out of curiosity, because my history with politics is, I was a fundamentalist Christian, and I remember, Reagan getting elected and not knowing or caring or understanding much about the world or politics or anything like that, mainly until I went in the military. And for the early years, I was a Rush Limbaugh ditto head. Like, I would go out and listen to Rush for, I'd spend my lunch break, because he'd do a 3-hour show, and I'd spend part of my lunch break there listening to Rush. I had both of his books. And it's one of those things where it's very compelling when you're already in it and when you don't bother to investigate. And we didn't have quite the robust opportunity to dig around on the internet and find out what's going on. But I can remember, so basically I'm 55 now, and I've gotten gradually better informed on politics and much more political, but primarily focused on social issues. Like, I got the basics of finances, but if somebody says, "Ooh, I'm going to put tariffs on everything," and then somebody else is like, "Yeah, but it's the United States citizens, the ones that are ultimately going to pay for the tariffs, because they're just going to raise the prices and everything else," it is baffling to me how different economists, experts, will come to completely different conclusions on things. When you're thinking about politics now, I get it. You and I are pretty much on the same page, and neither of us can think of any reason worth voting for Trump.
Right.
But in picking out who we'd like to vote instead, do you spend much time on like who your ideal candidate would be, or is it more pragmatic of, this is my best viable option right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I've been able to do that yet, because the only elections I've been critically thinking for have been versus Trump. And so I haven't had the privilege of getting to think, like, do I really like this other candidate? I mean, I was definitely a Bernie bro. That's right before I deconverted from Christianity, and I had already started progressing my politics, interestingly enough. And so I did really love so much of what he was advocating for. I loved his consistency. I loved that he had been this same person for years and years and years. but other than that, I've never really been able to get excited about a candidate because it's just been survival mode is how it feels.
Right.
Because I know Christian nationalism. I grew up in Christian nationalism and I know how dangerous it is. I know how effective it is. I know their goals. I've seen them already accomplish one, which was to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And I know the next one's on their list. And so to me, I don't get to sit around and think like, what candidate would I like? I'm just like, we cannot afford to have Donald Trump, the puppet of the Christian nationalists, continue to be in any kind of power whatsoever. So that's where I've been. I look forward to, I dream about a day where we can be like, let's look at these candidates and see like who actually really aligns with where I'm at, instead of who's the biggest threat to my actual safety right now so that I can vote against them. I feel like I keep having to use my vote against Donald Trump, and I'll keep doing that as long as I have to. So.
Well, on that note, we've got some callers queued up, and we can kind of see how this goes today. If you want to call in, the contact information to use the web interface is down in the description of the show below this, but you can also call 720-619-2288. We got calls queued up, and we're ready to try. Let's see how we're doing here. Robert in New Hampshire, pronounce him. Robert says he's not voting and he wants to tell us why, and it has something to do with neither party sharing his views. So, Robert, what's up?
Oh, my bad. You were muted, caller, because we were resetting the system. You should be good now.
Hey, Robert, you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So the reason why I'm not voting is because there's an ongoing genocide in Gaza, and both candidates are giving, pretty much unconditional support to Israel in this genocide.
That's not quite true, but okay.
I'm far left, so I have, I do have far left views. I'm not religious or anything, so and I am from a Jewish background, but I see how the propaganda that's used against pro-Palestinian or anti-genocide protesters, as by the Democratic Party, by the way, as the dishonesty behind calling us anti-Semites when there's so many Jews involved in this protest movement. So I don't feel that there's a real honesty in either party, and I'm not on board with this whole idea of the lesser of the two evils. Yes.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? Because you can't. When you're supporting genocide and you both parties.
You're not supporting genocide. Okay. Stop framing it as supporting genocide.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Robert?
Yes, go ahead. And I'm not arguing. I don't argue. So I'll listen.
Arguing is great. We can totally keep it civil and all that. My question would be, how is not voting going to help anybody in Gaza?
Well, I don't, mind you, I don't just not vote. I actually go to protest. I actually,
But you can keep doing all of that. I'm just curious how not voting is going to help anybody, because the way I look at it is we have to put on our own oxygen mask if we're going to help anybody else. And Donald Trump is trying to get that oxygen away from as many people as he can. So that's what I'm just really not understanding about people who are not voting due to what's happening in the Middle East, because I don't understand how the act of not voting is going to help anybody. And I can lay out some ways where it's going to harm and potentially make us unable to actually, bring any change.
Yeah. When you get to a point where you say, I don't want to vote for any candidate that is in any way supportive of what I see as a genocide, when both of the viable candidates are the only one, either Trump or Harris is going to be president, period. And you're like, oh, I don't want to vote for either one because they're the same on Gaza. Well, they're not remotely the same on Gaza, because Trump has flat out said that he supports Israel doing pretty much whatever they want, same as he does with Russia. He's kind of giving them a blank check. So if you went through all the issues, the reason to vote for the lesser evil is, first of all, it may not be evil, but the lesser evil is by definition the better option and the better world. Not voting doesn't do anything for Gaza, and it doesn't do anything for people who can be pregnant. It doesn't do anything for the LGBTQ community. It doesn't do anything for climate change. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything for anything. And you can go to as many protests as you want, but elections are what changes things. And when it comes to Gaza, at least Harris has been in favor of calling it a humanitarian catastrophe and calling for a ceasefire, including exchanging hostages for a ceasefire. Now, why is it, if you just wait around until somebody is pro-Gaza to vote for, what if they're also wrong on all the other issues that matter?
Okay, well, let me be honest with you. I am a leftist. I'm also to the, I would say a Marxist, and I just don't feel that either party represents my views on international relations, capitalism.
So what? Does one of the parties represent your views better on LGBTQ rights, on climate change, on abortion, on?
But put it this way: if the Democratic Party stood up,
I'm sorry, I asked you if one of the parties better represented your views than the other on climate change, abortion, LGBTQ rights, stuff like that.
No, neither one.
Neither party. Neither. So what's your position on abortion?
Oh, I fully believe that a woman should have total right to.
So on abortion, you are in agreement with Harris and not with Trump, right?
Of course. I mean and put it this way, like I said, I'm on the left.
Right. Here's the confusing thing for me, Robert. I asked a question, you didn't answer it. I asked it again, you didn't answer it. And now when I've served it up on a plate for a yes or no, you're still refusing to answer it. So which party, Democrat or Republican, is closer to your position on abortion?
Well, okay, obviously the Democrats
I'm
are
sorry.
closer.
I'm sorry. The question was, which party, Democrat or Republican, is closer to your position on abortion?
Democrat, I just said.
Cool. Now, which party, Democrat or Republican, is closer to your position on climate change?
I don't feel that either party does enough.
I didn't ask you whether you felt like either party does enough, Robert, did I? What was the question I asked you?
I'm sorry, sir. And I do have ADHD, so sometimes
I don't give a shit what you have. Just listen to the question and answer the question. I don't feel that either party has ever done enough on climate change, and I'm not convinced that either party is likely to do enough on climate change. But one of the two parties is far closer to my views on climate change and is actually doing something, and the other one thinks it's a fucking hoax.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not.
What about LGBTQ rights? Which Democrat or Republican? Which of them is closer to your position on LGBTQ rights?
Of course, the Democrats. Yes.
Good.
But not.
So
again,
why is it that you're willing to sacrifice all of your queer friends and the climate because neither candidate is good enough for you on Gaza?
Can you say that again, sir?
Why are you willing to sacrifice potentially all queer people's rights? I'm sorry. Why did you ask me to clarify and then fucking interrupt me while I'm asking you the question you wanted me to ask again? That's pretty rude. So let me try this again.
Okay, sir.
Why are you willing to sacrifice progress on climate change and equity for gay people and queer people just because candidates, neither of them are good enough on Gaza for you? Why are you willing to throw everybody else and every other issue under the bus and just not vote?
Because that's a big issue, that's the biggest issue. There's a genocide going on.
Yeah.
And there's no way.
And what's your vote going to do? Oh, wait, you're not voting.
What?
Robert, what are you, Robert, if Kamala wins, what do you think is going to happen with Gaza? That just things will keep going in the same direction that they're going?
Yes, I do.
What do you think will happen if Donald Trump wins? This exact same?
Yes, he will. Yeah, I do.
You don't think there's any chance that it's going to be worse with one of them than with the other? Because I can tell you, Donald Trump is a puppet for Christian nationalists, and they are obsessed with Israel, like to a weird degree. They are absolutely obsessed. So you are not voting, which is going to help nobody, do nothing for anyone. So you're not even helping anybody in Gaza by not voting. You are just doing that for yourself to say, well, I don't like any of them. And I don't understand how you can look at what's happening in the world and see that there are people that are having actual rights taken away here in this country as well. And now we're not going to have those, and things are still going to be happening in Gaza. And how you can say, oh, but I can't vote because I don't like either of them. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to understand it.
I can't explain, sir. I can't explain. So,
okay.
I called in just in good faith to just, put out my view, but I'm not saying that everybody else should have this view. It's my
I appreciate it. I just genuinely am trying to understand because I'm hearing this. I'm hearing this from people and they're not explaining why they're actually not voting other than I just don't like either one. Is that a good reason to not vote?
Yes. I mean, if the issue that you're so much.
Robert, let me ask you.
Yes.
Why should we keep listening to you at all when you've demonstrated that you don't give enough of a fuck to make any kind of change, that you're willing to throw everything under the bus because something isn't perfect? If you're not willing to vote to make things better, why should we give a shit what you think about anything?
I think he hung up.
Robert hung up. That's
yeah,
bumming.
I'm so frustrated with that perspective because it really feels so deeply selfish. It feels like a virtue signal to be like, well, I don't like either, and I'm going to just tell everybody I'm not voting because I'm too moral and I care so much about what's happening over there. That's great. I care too. I also, at the same time, lots of things can be true at once, care about what's going on over here. I care about the fact that I'm already living in a state where if I get pregnant, I am, because of health issues I have, I'm automatically at risk of death instantly. That matters. How are we supposed to do anything for anybody else when our human rights are being stripped away over here by this crazy person who wants to go be best friends with all the dictators all over? And you think that's going to help anybody in Gaza by just sitting back and being like, well, I don't really like them. Not a good reason.
It's almost like people like Robert think people are going to build a statue to them. Like when everything is said and done, we'll have a statue to all the people who refused to vote because they didn't do anything to save the climate, save the planet. They didn't do anything to protect democracy from a fascist who incited an insurrection and an attempt to overthrow the government and void the rightful elected will of the people. They're not doing anything to help economic change. They're not doing anything to change immigration issues. They're not doing anything on any number of issues. They're not doing anything to advance education or social issues. They're not doing anything to make sure that billionaires and corporations pay their fair share of taxes. They're not doing anything to advance and eliminate poverty, to advance and broaden the middle class. They're not doing anything for anything, but at least they didn't vote for someone who was willing to follow international law and our treaties and provide weapons to an ally even after they started a genocide. Congratulations. I'll get busy chiseling your statue right after the show's over.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you want to just lie, just tell people that you're not voting, if that's what it is. And then please, for the love of God, go vote. If that's what it is, if you just want to be able to say like, well, I'm too good to go vote. Cool. Say that if you think that's where it's at. But then show up and have a voice.
It's a weird thing to be proud of. I'm not voting. Okay. That's like saying, I'm not commenting in chat. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was somebody who sent me an email today. I genuinely don't remember this person at all, but that's not surprising. It happens like that quite a bit. But evidently they called into the show or had some bad call 2.5 to 3 years ago. And it went bad enough that they got banned. And so today they sent me an email that was like just this lengthy screed and was like, I don't want you to undo my ban. I just don't ever want to talk to you again. Bye. And I'm like, my reply was this: I have no idea who you are or what emails or call you're talking about. You don't have to send me an email. You don't have to write me an email to tell me you don't want to talk to me again when you're the only one who remembers that we ever spoke.
That's wild.
It is. I'm living rent free in this guy's head for 3 years. And I'm wondering, for the people who decided they're not voting, well, we have another Robert. Robert's calling from Ohio to explain that he's not voting. So welcome, Robert. Why aren't you voting?
Hi, guys. So I really don't like Donald Trump. I could never see myself voting for him for a multitude of reasons. I'm registered independent, though, if that matters. But something that really kind of holds me back for Kamala is mainly the abortion problem. And that's really one of the major reasons that stops me from voting Democrat every year, because I haven't voted since 2016, and when I did in 2016, I went independent. Last election, I was very tempted to vote Biden, mainly because of the pandemic and thinking Donald Trump is not going to keep us safe and not taking this seriously. And then the whole January 6th thing happens. And
that's got to be a lie, Robert.
You know,
there was no pandemic when you could vote for Biden.
What do you mean?
Oh, never mind. I misheard you. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no, you're good. So I'm not sure. Basically, so that's my point, is I really don't like Trump. I think that Kamala is very well equipped. She's very qualified for the role of president. I think she'd do a whole hell of a lot better than Donald Trump would, and I really don't want to see him back in office. But
you're not willing to vote for her just because she's not putting enough restrictions on women's bodies?
Yes. Well, see, that's why I wanted to talk to you guys, because I know, and I've listened to the show for a long time, Matt. I've actually listened to you since I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I'm 20.
Explains the length of my beard.
27, 28 now.
That's awesome.
I was making a joke that explains the length to my beard. Basically, you make me feel old, so thanks.
Yeah.
So okay.
And that's one thing that I've always had a trouble with understanding the perspective on many pro-choice people, and maybe we can just get into that, and I can try to understand a little better and maybe jump over this hurdle a bit.
I'm happy to give you just a quick anecdote real quick about why I'm particularly passionate about this. First of all, I'm passionate about women having autonomy over their own bodies, but I'm selfishly, I would like to stay alive a bit longer. And I had an ectopic pregnancy years ago that almost killed me. And I'm at a high risk of having another one if I were to get pregnant again. And that was a wanted pregnancy. And luckily, because it was wanted, that's why I was checking. And I happened to see early on that I was pregnant. If I hadn't have caught it, then I could have easily died, because there weren't really other symptoms that I was pregnant. And ever since, luckily at the time, I was able to get treatment, life-saving treatment. And it actually took 2 attempts. I went through, it was basically 2-month process to finally get my body to stop trying to take itself out, essentially. And if that were to happen to me now in the state that I'm in, I would have to go to another state to seek treatment. And I would be at risk of dying if what the right wants to accomplish gets accomplished if they get into office. So that's a big one to me. So even if I can't convince you about abortion in general, like we don't have to debate that. Maybe Matt will want to get into that with you. It's not just abortion that is in this debate. It's women's bodies and their autonomy over that. So they're also talking about banning IVF. They're even talking about banning surrogacy, which is wild. So I don't feel like that's a good reason at all. Even if you are staunchly anti-abortion, there's so much more at risk with these conversations surrounding and these policies surrounding abortion.
Right. And, you know, the ectopic pregnancies, I know that's not good for the people that are getting pregnant. You're basically, your life is at risk, like you're saying, you know? So like I call myself pro-life. I do believe that, you know, I don't know how you guys feel about wording it this way. Abortion ends a life, it ends a human life, but I'm not saying it's never a thing. Like if a woman is very sick or a person's very sick and pregnant and could possibly get seriously hurt or even killed, you know, I think there's a place for abortion in that. I don't think we should have a blanket ban on every single abortion, because you saw that younger girl that you know, she had a child, and doesn't matter how the child gets there. Now we have a kid that's basically going to die, and he did die, I believe, if I'm remembering.
Which side do you think has that in mind more? Which side do you think is looking out for the health and safety of women or anybody in that situation? Do you think that it's Donald Trump, or do you think that it's Kamala Harris?
Well, I think Trump in particular doesn't really care about anybody except himself. But
yes,
on the right side, like the conservative side, and this is something that disillusioned me from a lot of conservative politics. In 2016, I think I mentioned that I voted then. I voted for Evan McMullin, third party. And that was a big factor as well. You what?
You threw away your vote, is what you did. You don't need to tell me which irrelevant person that nobody's ever heard of and has never won an electoral vote and had no impact on the election you voted for. You threw away your vote.
Yeah, I see your perspective on that. But as I've been learning more about politics and looking more into it, because all the people that just rallied around Trump and everything, I know you guys have made the sentiment before that the right is pro-birth, not pro-life, and I definitely see a lot of that, because they talk.
I don't even think they're pro-birth, honestly, because the healthcare system, they are not interested at all in helping decrease mortality rates amongst pregnant women. So I don't know that they are women when they're giving birth. That's already an issue too. So
yeah.
I have a couple of questions, Robert, specifically related to abortion that might make us get some headway. Are you in favor? Are you opposed to abortion being available for rape and incest?
So my personal, in an ideal situation, when I look at rape and incest, if it's a healthy baby, a healthy fetus, and the mother is healthy, I don't agree with abortion in those circumstances. No.
So you're fine with the fact that 26,000 women in Texas have been forced to give birth to their rapist babies since we put this restriction in on abortion. You're okay with that?
I'm not saying it's a good situation.
I didn't think you were standing up and applauding it, but you're okay with it. So,
right.
Why is it that anyone should? Let me see if I can phrase this differently. Why don't you want people who can become pregnant to have bodily autonomy and decide that they no longer want to be pregnant? What gives you the right to force someone to be pregnant against their will? And how is that not rape?
I think, and let me know what you think about this perspective, that if ideally the medical help was there to where we could remove the fetus from the person's womb and
I'm
allow
sorry
it
we
to
don't
grow
live in science
naturally.
fiction world right now. We have to deal with the reality. You don't get to invent
Right.
science fiction solutions to real world problems. My question was, why aren't you willing to let women have bodily autonomy and decide? Why is it you think you and other people can force people to be pregnant when they don't want to be?
Well, that's, like I said, this is where I believe the situation is a problem. And like you said, we don't live in science fiction fantasy world, and I wish we would, because it would be a lot easier. Because
it'd be a lot easier
I
getting
see
people
this,
who can't be pregnant to stop thinking they get to control whether or not somebody else should be forced to be pregnant if we lived in sci-fi land. But I live in reality. So why do you think you should have the right to force someone to remain pregnant against their will? Why does your view trump their view?
a major reason why I find myself against abortion, thinking it's not good in a lot of circumstances, because it does end the life of a potential human child. And
It actually doesn't. Abortion's the termination of a non-viable pregnancy. But yes, you can frame it like that. But the question that I asked is, why should you or anyone else have the right to force someone else to be pregnant against their will?
I mean, that depends on how much you value autonomy in that sense, because we do make laws based on restricting people's actions. And when you say it's a non-viable pregnancy, that's, well, let me see if you agree with this, what I'm saying.
Let's answer my question. I don't need to go through and explain anything about abortion. My question is, why do you think you should have the right to force someone to remain pregnant against their will? It's a straightforward question. Why do you get to force someone to remain pregnant instead of minding your own fucking business?
Like I said, it does end the life of a human child.
Why should you get to decide if somebody is forced to remain pregnant? It doesn't matter if it ends a life. Why should you get to decide that someone else should remain pregnant?
I'm not sure if we're gonna come to an agreement on that.
I'm not sure if we're ever going to answer the question that I've asked, because you just keep avoiding it. What's the justification for you declaring that somebody else has to remain pregnant if they don't want to be?
Because as it stands, the only way we can solve that situation typically results in the death of the other person involved.
Okay, so Robert, I have a question. If Matt had some condition where the only way he could possibly stay alive is if I happen to be some perfect match, if I'm permanently attached to him with some kind of something to donate my blood to him at all times, should I be legally forced to do that? Because Matt's going to die if he gets unplugged from whatever I'm donating.
Well, this, now I'm okay. This is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but there's like two different conversations, because if we're going to talk about hypotheticals, there's the hypothetical of what if we lived in a perfect world where we could remove the fetus.
I'm talking about right now with this hypothetical that I presented to you.
If they hook her up to me to serve as a living blood transfusion, this isn't science fiction. This fucking happens.
If you want, we could say if the only way he's going to survive the next 24 hours is if I donate a kidney. Should I be legally forced to do that?
No, I don't see any reason why we should.
Right. Okay. So why should my body be legally mandated to keep alive a fetus if I don't want to consent to that?
Well,
So, for example, do I have the right to use Eve's body without her consent?
No.
Why are you trying to give special rights to fetuses that other human beings don't have?
I do, and I appreciate you guys putting it out that way, but it does seem like a different situation to me, because
I'm sorry.
is not.
If I don't have the right to use Eve's body and you think a fetus does, isn't that you declaring special rights for fetuses?
I will have to think on that, because my initial thought is that, well, the fetus, it didn't ask to be using that
It
person's
doesn't matter.
body,
I'm not asking.
Matt,
You can
Matt
say,
didn't ask to lose a kidney.
Robert, this is so frustrating, because it's like you've never spent any time thinking about this or at all. Because here's the thing. What I asked was, why are you giving special rights to fetus? And you're like, oh, I'm going to have to think about this. And then you start giving potential reasons. There are potential reasons why you might consider, hey, maybe we should grant special rights to fetus. I asked why you were willing to grant special rights to fetus, because I'm not. I don't grant special rights to fetuses. And yet every position that people are advocating for that shuts down abortion is in fact a granting of special rights to fetus, gives fetuses the right to do things that no person, no actual living, breathing, out on their own person gets, not even the 1-year-old. This is why people mock the right for being, calling them pro-birth, when they're really, Eve's right, they're not pro-birth, but they're pro-gestation. They're not going to provide you the health care you need. They just don't want you to ever terminate your pregnancy. And this law has now resulted in 26,000 women in Texas alone having given birth to their rapist child. And the number of women in Texas alone who died while pregnant increased by 56%. 56% more women are dying while pregnant because of Texas's ban on abortions. Why do you want women to die? Why do you want to grant fetuses special rights? Why not just allow people bodily autonomy to control whether or not they want to take that risk, and mind your own business outside of that?
Yeah. Robert, I think you're so close to I think you're so close to getting what we're saying, and I hope that you really will go back and maybe even listen to this call. If you've been listening to the show as long as you say you have, I'd imagine you've probably already changed your mind throughout the course of some years on a lot of things. And I would ask that you please go listen to this and consider, if you're not voting, reconsider that and think about the situation that you're putting me in, which is to potentially have somebody legally require me to donate my body to another not even living being yet. And consider if that's a really good reason to not vote.
If I could say two things real quick.
Sure.
So there are people that are dying, and that's not good. Would you guys say
Congrats.
that? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm sorry?
I just said congrats on determining that dying isn't good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like nobody. I don't like it. Like the whether
Me
it's,
neither.
The abortion thing. Yeah, we agree on that. But sorry, I lost my train of thought a bit here.
You were going to say two things. One was dying isn't good. What was the other one?
But there are a lot of people that. Would you say that a fully developed person has more right to life than the fetus that's in the person's body?
Yes.
I think that's where we might where I might not be seeing that properly, I guess.
Not only do I say that the person that's, well, I'm not granting special rights to fetuses. You are.
Right. So we can say, if this is a human, it has a right to life, but it doesn't have a right to stay in this person's body without
Right.
this person consenting to it.
It does not have a right to live at someone else's expense.
And that makes sense. That and that's why because I spoke to a few of my more skeptical friends online as well a couple of years ago about this, and in that hypothetical scenario I brought up, maybe I can get your opinion on it. Do you think it would be better if, let's say, there's a person who's pregnant and for whatever reason they don't want to remain pregnant, we can remove that fetus without killing and destroying it? Because I don't like the idea of...
We do it all the time. We do cesarean section.
dying.
We do it all the time.
Well, typically, if it's early on in the pregnancy, it can't survive outside of the person's body, you know. So
Correct.
It does
That's
end up
why we're
dying.
talking about the overwhelming majority of abortions are absolutely the termination of a pregnancy. It's not abortion. Abortion is not a right to kill. It's not even necessarily a kill process.
I agree.
Though pragmatically, it does often destruct and result in the end of living material. Yes, that's a fact. But this is about whether or not that living material should get special rights over people.
Over anybody else,
And we can agree that if we could protect the fetus, we should definitely do that. But you're saying not at the
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't see how that's relevant. This notion that, if we could protect the fetus, we should do that. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I don't think it's relevant.
Okay, so let's move on to the last thing I was going to say. I do think, because you say I haven't thought about this, and I'll say I am quite nervous calling. That's not because of you or anything. I just have a bit of anxiety. I called the Transatlantic
believe it or not
show a few months back, and they were very nice and everything, and I was a bit anxious there as well. It's just a talking thing.
You're fine.
One thing that, and you guys brought this up as well, Eve, you especially hit on this, the legislation part of the abortion laws. I think that, honestly, and I see your view, Matt, on the bodily autonomy. You kind of look at it as from, philosophically, how do we justify that, the bodily autonomy thing. I think legislation-wise, that's a better argument, at least maybe not better, but I feel that deeper, because how do you determine, does this person need medical care that might be an abortion or a termination of the pregnancy? Who determines that?
The doctors.
I mean? And that's something that I've
the doctor
as well,
and
because you have
the doctor,
right.
the person who went to school and knows what they're doing.
Yeah, given the choice between,
because you have the ectopic and.
Given the choice between a doctor making a decision about when terminating a pregnancy is medically necessary, or Ted Cruz, or Robert, or random congressperson, which of those is best qualified to make a decision about when an abortion is called for and medically necessary?
It's definitely a doctor.
Cool. So why then? Why do we need? So why do we need to ban it as a legislative action at all? Instead, if we have Roe v. Wade, if we have those protections, we set specific limits on how and when it could happen, so that we don't have people overreaching, and then we leave it up to the doctors and the medical ethicists whose job it is to evaluate this stuff. Why are we engaging in more and more limitations on rights and freedoms imposed by Congress when it comes to medical stuff. Congress is trying to make sure that women and people who can't get or people who can get pregnant don't get to control their bodies. Congress, and I don't mean this as in everybody in Congress, I mean the people who are trying to get people in Congress to do this, they are trying to eliminate gender affirming care. As a matter of fact, there's a new lawsuit that I'm going to be talking about later this week, probably here in Texas, where they're trying to expand the state's ability to not only go after any doctor that has ever provided any sort of gender affirming care, including counseling and discussing gender affirming care, and they want to be able to track when women get pregnant in order to determine if they leave the state of Texas to go to some other state for an abortion. Why are we supporting fascist, draconian impositions by Congress rather than allowing people to make the decision themselves in conjunction with the medical experts? Why is it that a bunch of I really don't like abortion dudes think they should be the ones making the decision for other people?
Right. And what did you say that law was that was going after the doctors doing the trans care? Like, where is that from?
Texas. It's a lawsuit that I just got a phone call about last night while I was streaming, so I have not reviewed the lawsuit. I have a number of people who have contacts that send me stuff, but yeah, the Attorney General, they're trying to go after anyone in the state of Texas who might be leaving to get an abortion, and anyone in the state of Texas that is supporting any sort of gender affirming care, especially on minors. And that means if your 12-year-old goes and talks to their therapist and says, I think I might be trans, if your therapist talks to them at all in any sort of way that would be remotely supportive of the concept, they can then go after them, is what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really bad thing if they
Me too.
implement that. That's not good.
So Robert, let me ask you this.
Yeah, see, we agree on that too.
If we took abortion completely off the table, so that the one issue that is your stumbling block, if that issue goes away, who do you vote for?
Kamala. Sorry, I don't mean to keep mispronouncing her name.
Okay, and that's fine. I have occasionally done it as well, in part because of yeah. Thanks for that. Because of Marvel's Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. They spelled the same way, pronounced different. I'm going to screw it up on occasion too. It's easy. Just correct it and move on. But I like it. I like the thing that just shows a comma with LA after it, so it's Kamala. But
yeah,
let's assume
Jimmy brought that up, and I try to remember that.
So now that abortion's the only thing that's keeping you from voting for Kamala. So did you vote in 2016? Or were you not old enough?
I voted for Evan McMullen. I voted third party.
In 2016?
Yes, I was 19, I think, and I voted for Evan McMullen.
Yeah. And Evan, I suppose, was opposed to abortion?
Yes. He was a third party. He was mostly on the conservative side, but he was kind of one of those anti-Trumpers.
Okay. Have you ever voted for anybody that was in favor of abortion?
Sorry, are you still there? The phone sounded like it cut out.
I'm still here.
Yeah, he asked if you've ever voted for anybody in favor of abortion.
Okay. No, that was the only presidential election I voted in, and I'm not involved in local politics or anything like that.
Okay. Then I'll just be as frank as I can. If abortion is that big of a deal to you and it's that important, then the right candidate to support your values is Donald Trump. And if we can't convince you to support Kamala for the 95,000 other things that you probably favor her view on, then I'd rather have you not vote or vote third party. But it's just wild to me that there are people who, I get it. There's a glib line that comes from some people that are like, if you don't have an abortion, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. That's a bad argument. There's also people who are like, men shouldn't have any say in, women's body. That's ridiculous as well. That's not how laws are made. That's not. And by the way, you guys, everybody who can get pregnant would definitely rather have me making laws about their body than Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert. I'm going to do better by women.
Yeah.
Anybody with a uterus is like, yes, Matt's my dude. But I get the sentiment. And I think probably part of the problem here, Robert, is that you kind of embody what some people are going to do as the nutshell argument to dismiss dudes, because you're never going to be pregnant. And because of that, you can sit in a position of privilege knowing that you're never going to have to face the consequences. So how would you explain to Eve, if Eve becomes pregnant and wants to not be pregnant, how would you explain to Eve why you're not going to let her stop being pregnant?
Well, this is kind of what I was going with my second point before I got sidetracked, because I'm all over the place at times. The legislation part of this that you brought up and that I've been thinking about that made me call in the first place, because if I was just, no abortions whatsoever, that's easy. But that's also being a one-issue voter, and I don't want to think of myself as that, even though practically that's what I'm doing right now. Like if somebody, and you, Matt, you brought up they're checking the women for pregnancy, they want to do that. If someone has an abortion, how do you legislate? Was that medically necessary? Was that not medically necessary? Like you said, that's the government kind of making those kind of decisions. And I don't know, that seems like I understand, because like, I don't know if the call screener told you guys, I'm a Christian. I actually have a lot of Christian friends, including a pastor friend of mine who's a very good friend, and all of them, the one thing that holds a lot of them back, and I'm assuming this is big for a lot of other people as well, is abortion. That's the thing that stops them from
I'm sorry, Robert. Eve, do you think that remotely addressed your concern about being pregnant and not being allowed to terminate it? Because I don't.
No, and
like
Robert, here's my question for you.
That was my mistake.
It's okay. I appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate that you're willing to kind of think through this position you've landed in. That I don't think you're going to continue. I think that you're already trying to think critically about this, and I really appreciate it. Here's my question for you, because it sounds like we agreed on a lot of points about not legislating women's bodies or anyone's body to that degree, and we know that Donald Trump is advocating to do that. Like the right is advocating to do that. They have this Project 2025 thing, and Kamala is not saying, I'm going to mandate abortion. She's not going to say, like, now everyone that can needs to go get abortions. I would understand then if you're like, well, can't vote for her because of this one issue. She is actually just actively looking out for the autonomy of women. And I understand that you haven't figured out yet fully exactly where you line up on what you think the government should or shouldn't legislate with that. But wouldn't you rather err on the side of freedom for women to decide what happens with their body, for really just anybody, though? Like, we don't want this to become a trend where the government is making these sorts of decisions that should be made by doctors.
Right. And like I mentioned a little earlier, I kind of became disillusioned with a lot of the conservative politics and people in America, because that's kind of what they sell themselves as, is like, we're the small government, we're the freedom, and the Democrats are the fascist, evil people, crazy people, whatever. But then they're like, well, but
they're projecting.
You want, as long as you're a Christian, as long as you're like, when you're American president, you got to be president for all the Americans. You know what I mean? And we got gay people, we got trans people, we got, like you said, people that might need abortion care. That's the one thing I'm working through.
Yeah.
So, you want to make sure that you're making laws for all those people, that builds up all those people, not just the white dudes. You know what I mean? Like, and that's
Robert, it sounds like you don't. Yeah, it sounds like you really don't want someone like Donald Trump in office. I think that's a really good reason for you to go vote.
I really
I
don't.
really do. Yeah, and the only chance at that not happening is to vote for Kamala, because we know a third party's not going to make it, and to not vote is obviously only going to benefit. So I don't know. I hope we've started to have you rethink your decision about voting, because I think that this is an issue that you actually align with us more than you realized when you called, and I think it's good for you to go maybe hear more of these points of other people talking about it as well, because if you are looking to protect the most amount of living people, whether we agree on what that is or not, regardless, I think there is a clear candidate that is looking to do that, and one that is not.
Yeah.
One that is only in this for his own best interest. I don't think he's looking to protect anybody's life or make anybody's life better. There's nothing pro-life happening over there, you know? But I really appreciate this conversation, Robert, and I really appreciate you hearing us out on this.
Right.
And when you work through it, I'm going to let you go because I got to get on to some other callers.
Sorry.
I'm going to let you go because we got to get to some other callers. But when you work through this, you may never get to the same position that I have. Because, for example, I never, ever, ever give a shit if an abortion is medically necessary. I don't think that advocating for individual freedom and autonomy in any way is contingent on whether or not something's necessary. It's not necessary for me to wear socks that match, but sometimes I do. Apologies to Stephen Fry for partially stealing his analogy, but the very notion that we should, like, I went for the easy questions to begin with because, for example, Ted Cruz doesn't want exceptions for incest or rape, but a lot of people do. You either don't or might not, and
I would currently know.
Yeah, and I would wonder how much of this is tied to notions of theism, because if you think, for example, that there is a God who has a plan and that this pregnancy, even if it came from a rape or incest situation, is part of God's plan, then that will impact whether or not you're willing to make exceptions in those cases, because if it came from God, it can't be bad. And unfortunately, for anybody who thinks like that, and fortunately for the rest of us, we don't get to rely on people's religious suspicions about what God wants when we're trying to enact legislation. That's where the church-state separation thing comes in. And so when we instead look at the facts, for me, it's pretty straightforward. If somebody does not want to be pregnant, not only do I not know what justification we have that could ever force them, I don't know why forcing them to remain pregnant could be a good deal for anybody. And one thing to look up, just because you might be as ill-informed as I was, I don't know for sure, but you could be, because I was an idiot. Carrying a child to term permanently alters the pregnant person's physiology. Not just having a baby, not just being pregnant, but the 9-month process of carrying a child to term permanently alters the pregnant person's body in a number of different ways. This is not, we grow up in a world where, hey, look, we were all the result of a pregnancy, and people get pregnant all the time, and 10-year-olds get pregnant and deliver just fine, and so-and-so had 12 babies and all that. We live in this world where pregnancy is just kind of like, yeah, oh, cool, I'm glad you're pregnant. It's so happy, so happy, so happy. And we don't think about anything because we've advanced medically enough to where the infant mortality rate has declined, to where the rate of women dying in pregnancy and in complications due to pregnancy, all of that declines. And so we look at it like it's no big deal. You're going to have a baby, and then you take a couple of days off, and then you go back to work. Look into what you're actually advocating which is to force someone who does not want to remain pregnant, taking a constant risk to their health and their life. Granted, it's not the biggest risk ever because we've made some progress medically, but you're forcing them to put their life and their health and their finances at risk in order to say, hey, that fetus needs its chance to live. That's never enough for me. But yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot for calling, Robert. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to talk to you both. Have a good night, guys.
You too.
You too.
And if you're not going to vote for Harris, don't vote.
Yeah, I really hope he'll reconsider. I feel like there was way more reasons for him to vote for Harris than to not vote. So
yeah, and it's one of those things where if you're truly a single issue voter, like there's one issue and it outweighs everything else, I can understand that. And depending on what the issue is, I can even lean that way on occasion. Like, for example, one of my biggest issues is democracy. And in Trump, we have someone who's a threat legitimately. Oh, I only want to be a dictator on day one, and I only want to pal around with dictators. And, we have to deal with the threat from inside. And if we have to send the military after the left after I'm elected, then that's what we'll do. Even if you just believe it's rhetoric, even if you just, nothing like that will ever happen. I mean, a Supreme Court's basically said that a president, when doing anything that can be considered official duty, is basically immune from prosecution, no matter what laws they break. And that's an absolutely terrifying thing, because and we still don't know exactly. The Supreme Court would have to make some decisions. We still don't know what all fits as a part of official duties and responsibilities. What if, as president, you are sworn to protect the United States and the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and you, in the exercise of that job descriptive task, decide that your political opponent is an existential threat to the Constitution and the United States? Then wouldn't it be a requirement of your job to have them killed? If you made a legitimate case that this person, your political rival, was an existential threat to democracy and decided to take them out, are we saying that if you can convince the bulk of the Supreme Court that was an official duty, you're now immune? These are serious issues that we all think are never going to happen. But I'll tell you this, with Kamala Harris, I have virtually no fear that anything remotely like that would happen. And with Trump, it's at least an open question.
Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. If you want to be able to continue to vote on one issue, I can tell you who to vote for this election so that you can keep sticking to that plan, if that's what you want to do.
The other thing for Robert is, after you figure out, because you didn't really answer the one question, which was, let's say Eve's pregnant and doesn't want to be, you need to figure out exactly how you're going to tell Eve that you're going to force her to remain pregnant.
Yeah.
What? Oh, but then right after you're done, you also need to go to all of your LGBTQIA friends and explain why you wouldn't vote to support them. And then as we all begin to die from climate change, you need to explain to all of us why you wouldn't vote for the better world on climate change. And as the potential economic collapse and wars begin, you need to show why you didn't vote. So the non-participatory thing of non-voting, it's an incredibly privileged position. What you're basically saying is, my life is good enough that I can suck anything up for the next 4 years or 8 years or 12 years. And I'm very happy for you that your life is good enough that you can suck it up for 4 years or 8 years or 12 years. But some of us can't, and some of us won't.
Mm.
Anyway, we've got other callers.
Agreed. And if you guys are already on the line, that you've been screened already, we're going to get to your calls. There's a few of you, and we will get to you. So don't drop your call. So we're excited to get to all of them.
We have full lines right now, but Dave's calling from California. Pronouns are he, him. Dave's a theist who just can't get to atheism. Dave, what's going on?
Hi guys, excuse me. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
I don't really have these. I don't have these conversations with anybody really. I'm just sort of kind of dipping my toe into skepticism. I do have a few bullet points written down just to start off with, just so I can get my thoughts out, and then I promise I'll put that away and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, go for it.
But yeah, the kind of things I'm like kind of hung up on is like, okay, we'll start here. Like, full disclosure, yeah, I guess I'm a theist, but I don't feel like I've definitely stepped away from organized religion, or I don't feel like I can be in a worshiping community with all, like, certainly in the last like 10 years, like all the Christian nationalism rising and Catholic priests raping kids and all the LGBTQ stuff. Like, it just doesn't line up with my moral. Doesn't feel right. And
okay.
That was, I guess, good enough for a while, and now and the pandemic happened like 4 years ago, and so I guess my big question is just like, when does like doing your own research like turn into like conspiracy theory land? Everything, like the vaccines came up all of a sudden, like people had dissenting opinions from like experts, and so everything that I was taught as grew up Catholic, specifically with like organized religions, do you believe that like priests and rabbis and pastors and all that are just like peddling like one big lie? Do you think they actually believe this stuff? Like, I mean, so many people believe in a God. So many people have these beliefs, and they are getting these from people who have degrees and everything. And so, like, doesn't there have to be some sort of truth somewhere in that? And then,
yeah, I think
my final thing
what
is,
you're
like,
asking.
how do I start?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just how do I start thinking? How do I start down the path of like thinking critically when I was raised in a church to never question anything?
Yeah, I think your first question, I hope that this is correct. I want to just make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. You're asking when does skepticism turn into conspiracy, right?
Yeah, that's like the big thing. And I know I went all over the place. Sorry, I'm really nervous. Yeah. My stomach dropped.
No, you're great.
Happened, so.
Thanks for calling. You're totally great. Skepticism is it's a process. It's a way of thinking. It's not a conclusion. Conspiracy is a conclusion that you've reached about something. That's my opinion on how that all goes. And so it's one thing to say like, I want to look into this more. This is interesting. It's another to say, this seems off, and therefore it must be the craziest possible thing I can think of. That's when we start and then you start looking for things to confirm that conspiracy instead of just to maintain some skepticism and then see what aligns with reality. I'm sure Matt has like a way better way of saying that, but that's what helped me when I first started that process of trying to think critically about specifically theism, because I had been thinking critically about other things, and then I had to learn how to apply it everywhere instead of keeping it out of certain places in my life.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of clear. I think I do kind of understand. I guess that maybe the means to an end kind of thing, or like you're trying to find evidence to support this other thing, instead of like looking at evidence like as like the first thing to get. Am I getting that right, or am I completely off base?
Yeah, I think you're getting what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just don't
Matt,
know where
what are
to
your
start.
thoughts?
So I mean, I guess yeah, Matt. So
like you mentioned a lot of stuff, and I can try and sort through some of it and maybe drill down. You talk about, so for example, you mentioned theologians and people with degrees, or people who were like learning about God and they're getting it from the experts. I want to challenge that thing right off the bat. Theologians are experts in theology. They're not experts in God. There's no one who's ever demonstrated any expertise in God. I could be a theologian. I know a great deal about holy books, holy traditions, world religions, and all kinds of stuff. Now, granted, to be fair, generally speaking, when we talk about theologians, we're talking about advocates for a particular position. But when we're talking about expertise, for example, a biologist has expertise in biology, but may not necessarily have strong expertise in chemistry. They may know some about it. Maybe they minored in it. They have to know some of it to get it. But a biologist might not know anything at all about economics, and a biologist might not know anything at all about Roman Catholic traditions. But they're an expert in a particular field that is true and tied to reality. Theology isn't a field that has been demonstrated to be true and tied to reality. So we have no experts in this God thing. When it comes to how are you going to start thinking critically, I'm getting ready to do a video probably next week about asking the right questions, because it struck me the other day how many times I'll be on a call with somebody and I will ask them a question and they will reflexively go, wow, that's a great question. And I tend to glibly say, yes, I know, I've done this for a while. And it's because I don't think you get to the point where you're asking the right questions quickly or easily. One of the reasons why I can sometimes, not all the time, sometimes ask the right questions on shows like this is because I've done this for decades. And so first thing, if you're trying to get more skeptical, if you're trying to exercise skepticism, realize that there's no such thing as too skeptical, because skepticism isn't cynicism. It's not saying that's not true. It's saying I'm not ready to believe that yet, or I will believe that as soon as there's sufficient evidence. And so you can think you're being skeptical when you're really being cynical, and you can think you're thinking critically when you're really not. It's genuinely something you have to work at and train. And you have to understand logical fallacies. You have to understand propaganda techniques, all of those things. So you found yourself now, if I'm understanding you correctly, where you are no longer associated with any sort of organized religion, but you just kind of keep hanging on to some kind of God thing. Do you have how would you describe, I don't care how bad it is or how good it is, just like if somebody said, what God do you believe in? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's hard to let go of like how I grew up and how I lived my life for like 28, 30 years. So, I mean, I would describe a God, I think, that's pretty similar to the God of Christianity, God of the Bible, I guess. But again, like some of the teachings that or like the positions, perhaps I should say, that the church has held so dearly to, I can't get on board with that. But I would have some sort of, specifically to answer your question about God, be like obviously like a conscientious creator or energy or something that kind of began. And I mean, this has even changed a little bit, because now I don't even think that like he's sort of all powerful or all good or all the omni stuff, because he can't be all three, because like there's too much shit going on.
Can't be any two of them.
State of the world.
Not only
two of them, I guess. Yeah, right.
Not only can he not be all three, he can't be any two of them. And it may be that omnipotence itself is self-contradictory. But without worrying about the omnis, let's just say that there's a God that is as powerful as possible, as knowledgeable as possible, and as good as possible. Rather than going the omnis, we're just maximally good, maximally wise, maximally powerful. Is that a God that you could get behind?
I could, if we lived in a world where I could see that was possible. I mean, yeah, I could get behind a God that was looking out for everybody. I mean, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Sure. Yeah, but the issue is, if we define God that way, do we have any reason to think that God exists?
I mean, I mean, no. I mean, that's the short answer. But the complicated itch that I get after that is just like, well, I was told. I don't know. Okay. I don't know if it's TMI or anything, but I had bone cancer when I was a kid, and I was delivered all of the oils and the holy waters, and my priest was at my house the church community and friends. I was like part of the thing. And, I was told like, this isn't I was a really good kid too. So it was just like, this isn't a punishment for you, because I'd asked like, why did God send me cancer? And I was just told, it's like, well, he's not punishing you. He doesn't give you anything more than you can handle. It's somebody else is being tested around you. And, so I started looking around me like, oh, okay. So now I'm wearing this suffering as like a badge of honor. And so, I mean, to me, at that point, it's like, okay, well, now I feel more holy or more one with this good or being stuff. And I didn't really see it as this bad thing. And now I'm looking back, I just celebrated my 20 years being cancer-free last 2 Sundays ago.
Yay, congrats.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. And now I'm starting to be like, well, again, because it's 20 years, and now I'm hanging out with my friends and my family that were with me 20 years ago, and we're reliving all these memories. And I was literally like, wow, this was really shitty. Like, I didn't deserve any of this. Like, what good God would do that? And I was in the hospital with people like stage 4, like terminal kids, like I was roommates as a kid with children younger than me and worse shape than me. And like, I wasn't really like clocking that, So like, yeah, I don't know. I like my life in the past, like certainly like 2 weeks, like I feel so like a crisis of faith, like flipped upside down. And I just got the balls enough to just call you guys. I hope that maybe
thanks for calling.
Figure out something,
There's a lot here. First of all, I want to make sure that no matter what else, that you are aware of the organization Recovering from Religion, recoveringfromreligion.org. They are not going to try to talk you out of your belief, but they deal with stuff like this all the time, where they're happy to talk to people and counsel, and you can just have the conversations that go beyond what we're likely to be able to do in a relatively short, although there aren't really short calls on this show. The other thing is the psychotherapy project, so that it's entirely possible. I'm going to assume, Dave, that you understand that you are free from cancer because of science and not because of God did anything.
I do now. I mean, I really did think I had a lot of really close scares, but nothing ever really bad happened. I mean, I had my childhood taken. I had a lot of other things that happened, but again, it was this idea of like, God never gave me anything that I could, like he knew, like he gave me the strength to like keep going and and be strong for like all these people around me, because everybody was counting on me and pulling for me to do it. So like back then, yeah, I absolutely thought that God gave it to me and then took it away at the right time. And I know I went through chemo and surgery and all that kind of stuff, and I know that was science, and I know they were a big part involved. But back then, it seems
incredibly cruel. In my view, it's incredibly cruel to put that sort of weight on people. The Templeton Foundation did a study on intercessory prayer. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I've talked about it many times over the years. But what they did was they took people who I believe were heart patients, and they divided them up into 3 groups. One group was being prayed for and knew they were being prayed for. One group was being prayed for and did not know that they were being prayed for. And one group was not prayed for. The group that wasn't prayed for and the group that were prayed for but didn't know it had basically identical results, healing across the board. The people who were being prayed for and knew it got worse. And the suspicion is, this not much worse, but they had more complications. The suspicion there is that by knowing they were being prayed for, it put extra stress on them to get better. And the stress itself may have been what complicated their condition. You can look it up. It's Templeton Foundation, because the Templeton Foundation's been trying for ages to demonstrate that a God exists, that intercessory prayer works. And when they do this huge study on intercessory prayer, they find that intercessory prayer works at the exact same rate as a coin toss unless you know you're being prayed for, in which case we suspect that your own anxiety is going to complicate the thing worse. When family members intentionally or unintentionally put pressure on you to get better in order to make a God look good, they're doing harm. They're doing psychological harm to you, and they are potentially slowing or inhibiting your progress. And it puts you in a position, and I'm not here to psychoanalyze or anything else, but you might have survivor's guilt for all I know. You might have been sitting in hospitals next to other people who were also good people, who also weren't getting what they deserved. And then those people died. And now you're in a position where you've been, God's going to do a wonderful work for you. And you're the one that survives and the other people don't. That can be traumatic. There's so much, I can't imagine. And I'm not saying you're suffering from that, but I just can't imagine what all you went through in addition to the cancer and the cancer treatment.
Yeah.
That's
my cousin actually.
I had open heart surgery.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I had open heart surgery. I had a triple bypass. It's no big fucking deal for me. It was a bigger deal for the people around me. Because I was like, well, they're going to put me out. They're going to do work. And then I'm either going to be okay or not. Nothing I can do about it. But you're sitting here dealing with a deadly illness and all of the treatment and pain that comes with that. And then in addition, there's extra pressure on you to perform on behalf of God. You have all of my empathy right now.
I'm sure that's rare. I don't know. Maybe not. You seem like a pretty empathetic person. But,
I hide it well because I've got shows to do, but I'm legitimately overwhelmed at what that must have been like.
Yeah. Dave, do you mind if I ask, so do you actively still believe in a God, or is it just this like hope that there's some remnants of what you grew up being taught?
Wow. I'm struggling because like literally I feel like a month ago I would have had a different story, and then now I'm not. So like I don't know where my brain is or where.
Yeah, and you don't have to. That wasn't a gotcha question or anything.
No, no, it's fine. No, I want to say, oh man, like it just letting go of like how I lived my life for so long, like feels like such a like I was super close with my family priest or my priest who I went to. I had a cousin that was a priest, and like I just can't.
Yeah, that was your world.
My head around is my world. It's just like is that these people are my friends. Like I mean like and do they? Is it all just one giant deceit? Like do it ever just to get money? You know, another thing that pulled me away from the Catholic Church too is I know that they're like got millions and millions of dollars just like sitting there, like just waiting for like rape accusations to like throw at lawyers. I'm like, what the fuck? Sorry, what the? I don't know if you can say sorry. What the?
Oh, you can say fuck all you want.
That? Like, you know. Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Like, what
Let
the
it out.
fuck is that? Like they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be. Like followers of Jesus, like they're supposed to be clothing the sick and feeding the hungry. Like it's just sitting there, so you just And again, I came from the diocese. I grew up. I'm not gonna tell you where. I don't want to do too much over the internet, but one of the big, spotlight, the big giant priest, like conspiracy stuff. Not conspiracy stuff because that happened, but when they found all those people, it's like my diocese was like part of that. Like I knew I altar served underneath this. Like these are and like
wow.
Like what like and that's why I'm like so for a while I was like I can't do organized religion, but I can still have a relationship with God because they're all sin, we're all from sin and we're all taught all that. So I'm like, okay, well there's just bad apples in the bunch, but I can still have my relationship with God, and I still feel like I do when things are really tough and
what does that involve?
I'm going in for scans and stuff.
Because I'll tell you, Dave, I had that. I had that exact same moment where I thought, you know what? Everybody, this was back when Trump came on the scene, and I watched people that I looked up to start worshiping this horrific, immoral figure. And it really brought up a bunch of questions. And I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to, like, who cares about organized religion? Who cares about all this? I'm going to deepen my faith, and I'm going to work on my relationship with God so that it's just me and God. And that's that whole thing. Spoiler alert, I became an atheist within about 3 months of doing that. But that's what I'm curious with you, because the conclusion I reached was that this relationship I had with God was 100% just me. There was nothing else. It wouldn't exist if it weren't for me. So I'm just curious where you're at right now with that relationship. What does that look like? Matt was asking that, but what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, that's my fear, Eve. That I'm there. Like, I feels like I'm there, but I can't like let go. Like, I'm holding on to like something that's like, I feel like
That's
I'm breathing. Like,
so
I'm
normal.
something. Like, I'm dead. Like, there's something
Yeah.
that's like dead. Like, something died. Like, and I'm sad. But also,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like, again, like I said, like I removed myself from, I grew up in a super small town. I did everything but say the freaking mass at my church, and then I went to college and I did theater. So, like, straight dude, but 90% of the guys in my class were the LGBTQ community. I roomed with one, and all of a sudden your mind gets open and be like, oh, these people are like legitimately like humans, and they're great people. Like, why am I told that they're like bad? Like I like, there's so much of the religion and the teaching that I does not feel good. I mean, that was easy to like, well, okay, I just don't have to go. But like, I can't be like, well, there isn't anything when I'm really, I promise you, at 13, like, I really felt like I was super holy, and like to give up on like, and again, like, okay, what if I die? And then I've just given up, and I'm in hell, and like this fear of hell. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
and like,
I think
I almost applaud
I
you
think
guys
where
for
you
just be like, yeah, I don't.
no, sorry I interrupted you. I think you're at the most normal place you could possibly be in this part of the process. Everything you're describing, I'm like, yep, that was me. Yep, that's me. That was my exact story. So I don't say that to try to invalidate where you're at right now and be like, well, look, now I'm an atheist. I'm trying to say there is hope. I have been in that grieving place where it feels unbearable, and I am it's not that I don't still have sadness about things I experienced and about how my worldview was shaped for me and all of that, but I have a much better life now. I have a lot more goodness in my life because of the things I was able to let go and process. But it is a process. So I think Matt was 100% correct to steer you to recovering from religion. I think the Secular Therapy Project would be incredible for you. You went through things that we can't even imagine as a kid. And I'm so happy. Congrats again on 20 years cancer-free. But I just think if you can, what I wish I would have done when I was in your place where you're at right now, I wish I would have known about recovering from religion. It would have made my process so much better. So I highly encourage you to actually look them up, make a phone call, send an email, whatever it is that helps you start that process of getting in touch and getting resources and support through this part of the process, because it is grieving. It is grieving, and you're going to need help through that process.
Yeah. You said it's recoveringfromreligion.org, you said?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that it? Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'll definitely start there. Thanks for being there, both of you. I really appreciate it. More than maybe.
Thanks so much for
you guys know.
calling.
I really, yeah.
Call
of
back
course.
anytime you have questions where you.
Rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Call back anytime you have questions where you think we might be helpful, or if you want to update on progress. But at the end of the day, while I would be happy to have a world filled with atheists, atheists are wrong about a lot of things. Atheists are assholes about a lot of things. I would much rather have a world filled with decent people who are asking questions and who are not so cocksure that they are right while everybody else is wrong. And so we can hang and talk about more stuff another time, Dave. Thanks.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Dave.
it. Thank you, guys. Both of you.
Well, we have wow. people. So some of the callers that are on the list, it lists them as atheists, and most of the rest of them doesn't list anything at all because they're all talking about voting or not voting or voting third party. So we're getting right back into it.
Let's do it.
Brandon's calling for Virginia. Brandon he is abstaining from voting. The system is broken. No candidate or party is trustworthy. Voting is futile. So nobody ever keeps their promises, Brandon?
I wouldn't say that they don't keep their promises. It's more about lying and misrepresenting.
Okay. Well, I would agree with you that at least one of the candidates has a serious problem with repeated lying, but I don't think the other one has the other one doesn't seem to have that much of a problem. But if you were to make a decision between the person who has been caught in the most lies versus the one caught in the least lies, wouldn't you opt for the least lies?
It's really about trust. Once the trust is broken, I don't feel like I can't put my stamp of approval on it. That's what I see voting as, is me going in and approving this candidate to be the best leader.
See, no.
But that's
voting
not
is
what
not
voting
a stamp of
is.
approval, and it's not a love letter to the candidate. Voting is your way of deciding whether you want a better world or not.
I'm sorry, I spoke at the same time as you.
It happens. There's a delay. Voting isn't an endorsement of a candidate or a political party or anything else, saying, yes, I approve of everything you've said or done, or you are the person. Voting is your decision. It's your chess move, essentially. And if you just decide you're not going to make a move, well, you've lost the game.
I can totally see that point of view, and I just feel differently. To me, trust is almost everything, and that goes with news sources, friends, or anything else. Once somebody has lied to me and tried to mislead me, it doesn't really matter what else they said or how good.
You'll never vote for anybody, and you won't hang out with anybody who's lied to you, so you're going to be lonely.
Oh, I mean, maybe. I'm not at that point right now in my life, and I wouldn't say that I wouldn't vote for anybody, but I do believe the two-party system, the way it's set up now, where it's only two parties that realistically have a chance of getting elected, is broken. And until we fix that, I can't.
Nobody's saying it's not. Nobody's saying it's not. But at the end of the day,
how is not
Trump,
voting helping?
Yeah, Trump or Harris,
again,
one of them is going to be president. Do you not care which one?
I wouldn't say that I don't care. So
because it looked really bad if you said that you don't care, because that means you don't care about people who can be pregnant or LGBTQ people or war or economics. As soon as you say you're not going to participate, you're telling everybody around you that you don't care about any of those issues. You don't care about climate change. You don't care about any of those issues.
I wouldn't say that I don't care. Again, if I felt trust in any party, I would get behind it.
You don't care enough to do anything is the point.
Oh, I do stuff. I try to talk to my friends, and I try to talk to anybody that'll listen and explain the way I feel about it, and that I think the party system is broken. But
so you think you're helping by convincing other people not to vote?
More that the system is broken. And I can give you an example of the Democrats being dishonest if you like it.
Brandon, nobody has objected to or the notion that the system's broken at all. The system's broken. Do you think not voting is going to fix it?
No.
Do you think voting can fix it?
No.
Why not? Because if I vote for candidates that make things better, if I vote for candidates that give us more rights, we can eventually vote for candidates that may help fix the system by eliminating the Electoral College, by stacking the courts. If Trump managed to get 3 Supreme Court justices and overturn Roe v. Wade, how can you say that voting doesn't matter if we lost Roe v. Wade during Trump's last presidency?
I would have never voted for Donald Trump, ever. He's terrifying.
The question was, how can you say that voting doesn't matter when we are living through the effects of voting?
That is a great question, Matt.
I know.
I would say that it's constantly the lesser of two evils. And I feel like the country is on, other than Roe v. Wade, that's one of the best points that you could probably bring up. And that's one of the most.
So you don't care about LGBTQ equality?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about climate change?
Absolutely.
Why aren't you doing anything? The parties are very different on these issues. You're aware of that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, do you think even though while people aren't going to be keeping their promises, you do realize that there's a way to track this? For example, so far in Biden's presidency, PolitiFact has shown that he's kept 28% of his promises, and he's only broken 3% of his promises. And there's some that are stalled and in the works. Whereas if you compare that to Trump kept 23% of his promises and broke 53% of his promises. So just on the who's more likely to break their promises, Trump seems to be, but you have to also look at what those promises are. Now, the promises that Trump kept included putting conservative judges on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe. And the promises and Trump also prevented trans folks from serving in the military. Biden reversed that decision immediately. So if one party wants to keep trans people out of the military and the other one is okay with trans people being in the military, then clearly whoever gets elected is going to determine what rights trans people have, right?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that a shame that trans people's rights are contingent on who gets elected? But what's more of a shame is not only are their rights contingent on who gets elected, but you're saying you're not willing to help them elect a person that's going to protect their rights.
If you make it about one issue, you could absolutely make that case, but
Let's
not
make it about 5
a single
issues.
issue.
Pick your top 5 issues. What are they?
I don't want to say that I'm a singular voter on one issue. I would say number one is freedom for all Americans. I asked what
your top 5 were.
Yeah, freedom. Freedom is number one. Honesty and transparency is number 2. Gun rights is definitely in there.
Okay, now
policies, though.
We've got 4 issues so far: freedom, honesty, transparency, and gun rights. Only one of those is a political issue.
Yeah, and it's not about. I understand that it's easy to say Kamala versus. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
You've given me 4. I wanted your top 5.
Honestly, I would say stop there.
Okay, so climate change, LGBTQ rights, and abortion don't make your top 5, but gun rights do.
All within freedom, personal freedoms.
Oh, so you're saying you're in favor of all those things as personal freedoms. Cool. So on the freedom thing, Harris wins, right?
Absolutely.
On the honesty thing, Harris wins, right?
No, I wouldn't say that.
You think that
you think Harris lies more than Trump?
The most liar in history in the presidential seat is more honest than Harris?
No. A lie is a lie. Once you've lied and misled.
No, sir. No, Brandon, don't be silly. There are people who are
I'm not. I'm talking about the Democratic Party.
Brandon, listen to me. Brandon, listen to me. There are people who are more honest than other people, right?
Absolutely.
Is Harris more honest than Trump?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. So at least for now, just comparing the two candidates, Harris wins out on honesty.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What egregious, we'll get back to that in just 1 second. On transparency, do either of them win out?
No.
On gun rights, who wins out?
Neither. They're terrible.
Cool. So what egregious lie has Harris told that makes you doubt her honesty?
I will compound upon that and say it's not only Harris, it's the entire Democratic Party. Everyone watched the decline of Joe Biden.
We're comparing Harris and Trump. I want to know what egregious lie Harris has told that make you doubt her honesty.
And I'm getting there. I promise you. It is Harris.
No, you're getting there right fucking now. We're not going to go down.
I'm telling you.
We're not going to go down with distractions into Democrats or other stuff like that. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. What egregious lie has Kamala Harris told last time?
Sure. She perpetrated the fact that
That's what I thought. Your phone might have gone to sleep. You might need to tap it. Only thing we heard you say was
perfect
she
timing.
perpetrated the fact.
I apologize. My phone did go to sleep.
So she
Can you
perpetrated
hear
the
me
fact
now?
that what? Yeah. What did she
Joe
lie about?
That Joe Biden was a competent president. Everybody saw the decline of
That's
Joe
not a
Biden
lie.
throughout his presidency.
That's not a lie. That's not a lie. Is he the fact that Joe has definitely lost some steps and there are concerns doesn't mean that he's incompetent as president. If you think Joe Biden's incompetent as president, somebody should be doing something about that, right?
Absolutely.
You don't get to just say that she's lying, because who knows Joe Biden better, you or her?
Her.
Yeah. And who watches Joe doing his job day by day, you or her?
Her.
So when you and I see Joe fumbling over his words or seeming to be lost in his place, does that mean that he's done a bad job?
No, absolutely not.
No. So you can't say that Harris lied about his competency. You can just say that she trusts Biden more than you do, right?
I would say that the whole Democratic Party lied about his competency. They were going to run that man after
How
he
did
saw
you
his
just agree
decline.
with everything Matt
you have
said
no-
and get to that conclusion?
You
I don't
get to
understand
make
how you
claims
don't.
about his competency. What criteria have you used to judge Joe Biden's competency, to determine that everybody in the Democratic Party lied about his competency? Go.
Well, I've been around elderly people my entire life.
You're
My
full of
grandmother
shit,
had dementia.
Brandon, you're not a fucking doctor, and you're not Biden's doctor, and you don't have any access to any information the rest of it don't have. You can have your suspicions, but you don't get to claim that people are lying unless you can prove it.
Okay, it would be very difficult to prove that without having a medical diagnosis. I agree with you there.
Exactly.
And maybe it is
so
some
you should shut the
speculation
fuck
on
up
my
about it, right? You don't get to say that Harris and the Democrats lied unless you can demonstrate that. That's the point. Now,
well, I believe the preponderance of evidence indicates that they did lie.
No, I don't see evidence that they lied.
I feel like I do.
Well, I don't give a shit. I don't care what random uninformed dude on the internet thinks about Biden, because Biden's not running for office. But you're trying to say that because Biden isn't competent in your professional opinion, which isn't a professional opinion, that therefore you're going to conclude that Harris and the Democrats lied about his competency. Meanwhile, he's still there doing the job and doing a good job. His policies are reducing inflation, right?
Well, you say that he's doing a good job. I believe his cabinet and the people around him are doing good at keeping him going.
Brandon, stop. Congratulations that you've decided that you can't be wrong about your assessment about Joe. So anything good that happened, you want to give credit to his cabinet. But at the end of the day, we're not electing people so much as we are electing someone to be in charge of a cabinet and a process. So congratulations, you've just confirmed that Biden is still competent as a president by listening to his advisors and doing what they say. So you don't want to give Joe any credit, because that would force you to admit that you don't know what's going on there. But you still want to pretend that Harris has lied about Biden's competency. Did Trump lie about the 2020 election?
Yes.
Did Trump lie about, let's say 5,000 other things?
Matt, Trump is terrifying. He's absolutely terrifying. I know about Trump. I know about
then
the
why
money
are
he
you
got
not
from Egypt.
voting? Who is more terrifying, Trump
why are
or
you
Harris?
not trying to stop Trump?
Why am I not trying to stop him?
Yes.
Again, the only way I can stop him is to put, and you say it's not a seal of approval. I see that as what voting is. If I go and I push the button,
you don't have to tell anybody.
You
don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to wear the sticker. You can just sneak in there. Nobody will ever know who you voted for, and you can do it. It is not stating your moral position or anything like that. And what you are doing is you are putting your seal of approval on all the people going to vote for Trump, because if people don't show up to vote otherwise, that's who's going to get elected. So you're saying that you're fine with that happening. If that's how we're going to measure actions and calling that signing off on something, then technically you're going to be potentially signing off on Trump becoming president.
Well, I don't think that my singular vote is going to make any difference at all.
You're wrong.
I really
It
feel
matters
that way.
it matters when a lot of people start thinking that. And as soon as you start thinking that your vote doesn't matter, then you've lost it. You've lost the plot.
And I understand what you're saying about I don't have to wear a sticker and I don't have to tell people, but it's a personal issue. This is how I feel. And I understand if, Matt, you disagree. And I'd like
So
to
your
say something
feelings matter more to you.
call.
Why do you care more about your feelings?
Sorry, there was a fly here. Why don't you feel bad that you don't give a shit about people who can become pregnant and their right to choose?
Well, I never said that I didn't care about them.
You're not doing anything to help protect their rights, are you?
I'm not actively doing anything to protect their rights now.
Yeah. And so if everybody thought the way that you did, what happens?
Hopefully we could fix the system.
How do you fix the system? By not doing anything?
Not doing anything isn't the way. It's third party. You can't elect the lesser of two evils constantly and expect positive results from it.
Yes, you can. The lesser of two evils is not even necessarily evil. The lesser of two evils is by definition the better option. When's the last time that a third party candidate got a single electoral vote?
Not in my lifetime.
Correct. 1968 was the last time a third party candidate got a single electoral vote. When's the last time a third party voter got more than 4% of the vote?
I don't know if it's ever happened.
1996. Actually, some third party candidates like Strom Thurmond got 17% of the vote. Strom Thurmond. I mean, this was back in 1948. Things have changed. At the end of the day, is anybody on the planet going to be president of the United States next January, next February, other than Trump or Harris? No. And so if you decide not to vote, aren't you saying, I'm okay with whoever gets elected?
Yes.
Okay. So you're telling the world that you're okay with Trump. Thank you.
I'm telling the world that I think the system
you're
is
okay
broken,
with Trump.
And us voting is not.
No, you're
going to
not.
fix it.
You know what else, Brandon? You're actually not telling the world anything other than in this call on this network, because apart from calling in to brag about how you're not voting, you aren't doing shit. So thanks for nothing.
I speak with my friends and I do what I can within my life. I got kids, I got a job. I don't have time to campaign.
You're not doing what you can within your life because you're not voting. Don't call in and act like you're on the fucking high horse for not voting. What you're doing is you're telling every queer person, every potentially pregnant person that you don't give a fuck about their rights. You're not going to stop the people who are trying to take their rights away. You're saying that your life is okay, that you can coast through some bad times for 4 to 8 to 12 years. That's what you're telling everybody. You're telling everybody that you don't mind if Trump becomes president. Well, cool. Thanks for nothing,
I would
Brandon.
hate if Trump came. I would hate if Trump
then you
became
should
president.
fucking
I would
vote
also hate if Kamala became
it.
president.
Okay. You'd also hate it if Kamala became president. Well, fuck off. Goodbye, Brandon.
Kamala.
Goodbye, Brandon.
Matt, can I say one thing, please?
No, you can't. Maybe if you'd have voted, you could have then exercised your voice. But if you're going to sit here and advocate for not voting and then say you're okay with Trump, and you'd hate it if Trump got in, but you'd also hate it if Kamala got in. Well, congratulations. We'll start building your statue after we build the ones to the other people.
Yeah, it just didn't feel like a very honest conversation.
This is one, we'll see. I don't know that I'll have much to say, but George is calling from Washington. George's an atheist who says he's not voting, but if you were voting, it would be for Trump because we're pushing people towards him. Hey, George.
Hey, do you guys want to take one more call and then come back to me? Because I'm actually driving right now, but I won't be driving in the next 20 minutes here.
Yep, you're in the queue. All right, we'll try this again. Ozzy in New York, prone to him say It doesn't matter who we vote for because politicians are bought and owned by AIPAC.
I'm coming in hot, Matt. I'm sorry. I think you're going to be upset with me.
No, I'm probably going to hang up on you. The fact of the matter is,
Why?
if Hillary had been elected in 2016, would Roe v. Wade still be the law of the land?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And so clearly it mattered who became president in 2016, right?
Yeah.
So how can you say that it doesn't matter who we vote for if it does matter who gets elected?
I voted for Joe Biden. I didn't vote for Trump.
I didn't ask you.
I'm not a Trump guy.
Ozzy, did I ask you who you voted for?
What?
Did I ask you who you voted for?
No, I'm saying I didn't vote for Trump. You can't blame that on me.
I didn't. Okay, first of all, I might be able to because you might be ridiculous. But I didn't ask you who you voted for. You're saying it doesn't matter who you vote for. And I'm saying it definitely mattered whether Trump or Hillary was president, which you agreed
saying
with.
That because of the APAC thing. Hello?
Are you suggesting that no matter who citizens in the United States vote for, that the American Israel Public Affairs Committee chooses who's president?
They control basically who's running. You know,
I'm sorry.
Who gets
I'm sorry.
in the race.
I'm sorry. The question I asked is, are you saying that no matter who American citizens vote for, the president will be chosen by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee?
Usually, yeah.
Okay, goodbye. I don't need conspiracy theory bullshit on here.
Yeah, that's wild.
Just absolutely fucking bizarre. All right.
Yep.
So here we are in a kind of maybe a similar but different road. Mario, pronouns they them, calling from New Hampshire, says no matter who we vote for, they will come up with an excuse to go to war with China.
New Mexico.
Because it says NH here, not NM. But
Yeah,
it's probably just a typo. Okay, so you're in New Mexico.
Yeah. I have to say I have autism at the beginning of every call. It'll, anyway. Yeah, I'm a communist. I mean, I have all the same concerns for marginalized groups you have. I use words like bourgeois and proletariat. Those words actually mean something to me.
Mario.
But anyway.
Mario, are you on a cell phone or a headset?
Do you want me to? I can get off the Bluetooth if you want.
Yeah, it's really scratchy and it's kind of overpowered. I think maybe if you just held the phone mic just slightly farther away from your mouth. So,
all right,
you're saying
better?
no matter who we vote for, they're going to come up with an excuse to go to war with China. Okay, let's assume. Let's hang on. Listen, let's assume for a second that you're correct, and that no matter who we vote, they're going to come up with an excuse to go to war with China. Does that mean that it's not worth it when all of the other issues are still up for, whether Harris or Trump gets elected is going to change trans rights. It's going to change pregnant people's rights. If they're both going to make an excuse to go to war with China, don't you then just skip past that issue to the issues that you think they're different on?
Well, it's like, here's the thing. It's the person running. It's their job to win. This is going to come down to electoral college stuff. It's going to come down to Muslims in Michigan.
Mario, stop.
It's going to come down to whether they want to support.
Mario, stop. I don't need you to tell us about the electoral college or anything else. I need you to answer my question, because you're saying that no matter who we vote for, they're going to end up going to war with China. And I'm saying, let's just assume that Mario's statement is true. And whether Harris gets into office or Trump gets into office, they will both find a way to go to war with China. So if they're the same on that issue, shouldn't we then move to the next issue to see where they're different in order to determine who we're better off with?
Like again, I'm a communist. I'm not the only communist in the
Mario, I
country.
didn't ask you whether you were a
We have
communist or a
different
socialist or anything else.
priorities.
I'm
Telling you.
Okay, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you and put you back in the queue. Mario, I guarantee you this will go a lot better for you if you answer the fucking question that I ask. Guaranteed. This will go better for you if you answer the question that I ask. Your statement given to the call screener was that no matter who we vote for, they're going to start a war with China. And my thing is, if I'm evaluating candidates and I find, let's say, 4 issues where they're the same, under both of these, they're not going to make Gaza sufficiently better. Under both of these, they're going to go to war with China. If I go down there, I start, once I get to the areas where they're different, that's how I determine which of them to vote for. So if we assume that you're correct, and that both of them would start a war with China, don't we set that issue aside and look at the other issues where they're different?
Only if you're looking at it from the narrow perspective of bourgeois politics.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Mario.
You're welcome.
Oh. It's not bourgeois politics. It is triage. Triage is what happens in war and in emergency rooms, where there are a bunch of people who need emergency medical treatment to varying degrees. And what you do is you assess them all and you prioritize them based on who is most likely to die without help and who is most likely to receive and benefit from help. And therefore, the person with the broken pinky is way lower on the list than the person with an open bleeding wound. And the person with a pinky toe that just got cut off and they've got it held with a bandage is much lower on the list than the person who is coughing up blood and unable to breathe properly. That's triage. And so when I'm evaluating candidates, I look at a whole bunch of issues. And if they're the same on an issue, that issue I gets tossed out. Like, it's like those spot the difference puzzles. If you have 2 pictures and you're comparing them to find the differences, pointing to all the things that are the same is a waste of my motherfucking time.
Yep.
Saying, ooh, that. Now, the only time that it's actually beneficial is if you pointed to absolutely everything in the image except for the 3 differences we were supposed to find, I might be able to find them. But every time you tell me that they look the same, that's just a distraction. The reality is they're not the same. They're not the same on any number of issues.
It sounded like they just wanted to call and say what they think and not engage in the questions that were being asked, which to me is actually narrow-minded. They were saying that that's narrow-minded politics, but yeah, I don't know. That was weird.
Oh, this is going to be pretty easy and fun. Matthew in California is calling in to say that he's voting third party and writing in Cornell West, and that he thinks there's value in a protest vote.
Hello,
Matthew.
Matt. Hello, Eve. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Irritated as all get out.
Understandable. So my reasoning there is I think there's a few issues, including the genocide right now in Gaza and Palestine.
How does voting for Cornell West help that?
It's not directly going to do that, but I think there's value in a protest vote, and that it sends a very small one-person-sized message that
no, it doesn't.
Is not okay.
Message to who?
It sends a message that you're clueless because you're voting for someone who isn't even on the ballot in enough states to get elected. You are literally throwing away your vote, and you think that it does something.
Matthew, I'm genuinely curious. What do you actually think it's going to accomplish? Do you have this large audience and you're telling them, hey, I'm not voting and this is why, and you're hoping that this will draw attention to it? I'm trying to understand what this does by not voting.
I recognize he's not going to win. I know that, the president is going to be either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And I agree that I vastly prefer Kamala Harris over Donald Trump for all the reasons you've been discussing. But I live in California. California is going to go for Kamala Harris. That is
not if every Californian starts thinking like you. It doesn't. If enough Californians start thinking like you, that can drain votes away. It's called the spoiler.
I see what you're saying. But if I applied that logic, like somehow everyone's going to start thinking like me, if we applied that whole thing, well, then we wouldn't be locked into a two-party system. But I don't think it's reasonable to think that. No,
if you applied, what if everybody acted like me? You'd come to the conclusion that the best thing you can do is to support the better candidate that has a chance.
I think if everyone voted for him the same way I did, Cornel West would be president. But they wouldn't,
Matthew, because Cornel West is not on the ballot in enough states. Cornel West is not going to get enough. Even if everybody went and voted for him, he can't be president.
I just have a question.
I agree he's not going to be president.
No, not going to be, cannot be. You are literally voting for someone who cannot get enough electoral votes because they're not eligible. They're not even on the ballot.
Yeah. And so, Matthew, I'm just curious. I don't know if you heard earlier me talking about how I've had an ectopic pregnancy. Abortion rights are very important to my immediate health. And how are you okay with someone like me having that right taken away? To the extent that you say, like, well, it's a protest vote. But that's what you're doing. By throwing away a vote in that manner, you're saying that you're okay with the potential outcome of Donald Trump becoming president. To the point that you would rather like make a statement, as you're saying, or a protest vote, than actually put some action to preventing that from happening.
I'm not okay with that. And
you are kind of, because the house is on fire and the rest of us are picking up buckets, and you don't like the fact that the buckets were bought at the dollar store where people were exploited overseas. And so you're going to stand off to the side with a garden hose that's not plugged into anything and pretend like you're doing something when you're not.
I agree the house is on fire, and I am trying to listen to people like what you've just said, and that is a good reminder. It is.
Thank you.
Donald Trump.
I really appreciate that.
I'm really trying to listen to you guys. That's a really good point. I'm quite confident that California is going to go for Kamala Harris. And Matt, I heard what you said earlier.
Then vote for her, just in case.
Who do you think is going to see your protest vote and
no one my name isn't attached to my vote.
Who do you think is going to see your protest vote and put any value on it at all? What percentage of the people who even know about your protest vote are going to think you're anything other than clueless?
I don't share my vote with the random person. So that's not what I see.
So you're going to vote for Cornel West, and you're not going to tell anybody about it. So you're throwing your vote away as a protest because you think protest votes are important, but nobody's going to know about your protest vote, which makes it not important.
Is there not some value in seeing that there was a significant group of people that didn't vote for one of the two main parties?
The significant value is that I have a group of people I can be pissed at when my rights are taken away from me and say, why weren't you there? Why didn't you do something?
I'm thinking about what Eve just said, and I think that's a really good point, that since I do live in California, I do see my vote as a protest vote. I think it also matters that there are people, and I recognize I'm not one of them. I'm living a fairly privileged life here. I'm not one of the people who's facing an existential threat if Donald Trump is president. I know that other people are. I think you make a really good point that a vote is a vote for that too. And I mean, the Israel-Palestine thing does really bother me. I've been reading.
It bothers me too.
Listening to people, and it hurts me to see it. But I do understand what you're saying is that there's immediate things that are happening right now.
I appreciate you hearing me out on that. And it matters to me what's happening in Gaza and all kinds of places all over the world. And as an activist, I want to stay alive and have the autonomy to be able to actually keep working toward making changes that help people like that. And I want to prevent things like that from happening here where I already live. And I need to have bodily autonomy in order to do that. So I have to vote against the person who wants to take that away from me. And I think that it sounds like, I appreciate you hearing me out. It sounds like you and I are very much on the same page when it comes to that. And I think your vote does matter. And I think it is valuable. Even if California is going, it's important for people to think about this and think, okay, how do you want to protest with your vote? Why don't you do it in a way that has action to it and actually could impact something and is helping? And at least you can say that you were one of the ones that helped stand behind people like me and said, it does matter what happens. It does matter what the outcome is. And I recognize that even if it doesn't impact me, and I cared enough to do something about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that if I lived in Pennsylvania, I'd crawl across the country to vote for Kamala, but I actually think you're convincing.
Thank you.
I think that's convincing. I'm going to vote for Kamala. If I feel that strongly about it,
You
I really
have made my entire night.
Palestine, but
okay,
I think it's a good point.
Thank you.
All right,
thanks. I really appreciate
it. So, Matthew, side note, I would love for someone at some point in the future, and you seem to be kind of leaning that direction, but we're not going to get into it more tonight. I would love for someone to explain to me how and why and when a protest vote has any effect at all. Because I mean, we're not going to dig in. I got one more call to get to, and then we got super chats to get through tonight. But genuinely, I sit here and I'm like, if you vote for Cornel West or Mickey Mouse, neither of those says anything. Like, I don't know why people voted for Cornel West. Is it because they were upset about Gaza? Is it because Kamala is more in favor of gun rights than Cornel West is? I have no idea what any supposed protest voters' objection is. I just know that they didn't vote for anyone who could possibly get elected. And to me, it sends a message that they either don't understand the system or they don't understand how a protest vote could possibly be.
That's what kind of just changed my mind. I feel like it sends a message to vote for Kamala too. And
during the primaries, everybody vote your fucking conscience. Pick your favorite candidate that you can get in the primaries. But what if people use the same logic in the primaries that they used in the general election, where, oh, I don't have any candidate that I like in the primary, so I'm not going to vote? That's actually what tends to happen. But I think more people don't vote in primaries because they just aren't involved enough to give a shit. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe, and I'm advocating for this so that we can all think about it and have discussions. If we drive voter turnout to the primaries in such a way that it rivals the turnout for general elections, I think that could make real improvements to the system. Because nobody but diehards shows up for primaries. Everybody that's going to vote tends to show up during the general elections. It's still only 2/3 of the population or so, maybe a little less. But the biggest voter turnout is always in the general election when there's in a year with a presidential debate. If we can get people to turn up and vote every year, voting locally, voting in the primaries, all of a sudden the primaries improve. And the primaries become a better representation of the people who are participating in it. Because right now, there aren't enough people participating in the primaries for it to be representative of anything. And that's how you get the conspiracy theorists saying that the president was picked by the Jews. And so I think over the next 4 years, no matter who gets elected, we should have a primary push for primaries. Your primary focus is on the primaries, because that's when you say, hey, look, I like Gary Johnson. I like, Jill Stein, despite the fact that she's probably just a puppet of Russia. you go down and you pick out, that's kind of a half joke based on some reporting today. I realize not everybody read the same thing that I read, but it's funny because she ran in 2016 and then she didn't run in 2020. And then now she's running again. And so there are people making the argument that she's just basically a Russian spoiler against the Democrats. And that's why she didn't run in 2020, because Trump would have potentially drawn away from Trump. But anyway, it's not necessarily true. I got completely derailed. Let's focus. Let's make the primaries our primary starting next year.
Yeah, and
Matt,
one thing I think we'll agree on here is please get involved with your local school district if you're at all interested in that. I've been going to some of those meetings recently, and for the most part, the kind of people going there, yikes. So yeah, we need more people going there.
Before we let you go, Matthew, I just want to say thank you for being willing to actively change your mind on air. It could have been easy for you to just hold your ground and then get off air and decide whatever, but I really appreciate that you were willing to have that conversation and say something. I think hearing this conversation will help other people as well. So thank you for just being honest in the way that you engaged with us. Unfortunately, that's kind of rare around here, and I appreciate it.
To be honest, I was partially on the fence before the call. I just wanted to make as strong of a case as I could, but it definitely changed my view. Like in the point I have conviction now on what I'm going to do.
Thanks. I will say it's a lot easier to make a case for Cornel West than almost anybody else you could write in. But you're the second one who's advocated for Cornel West this week, which is why I had already looked into Cornel West and where he was. And
I did actually hear that call.
Sweet.
And thanks, Matt, I talked to you on air real quick. I talked to you on air about 3 months ago, and presented a argument for God from intuition, and you didn't convince me over the air. But in the subsequent months, I've realized that what I thought didn't make sense. And one of the things you said in particular really stuck with me, which is, do you apply this logic to anything else in your life?
Oh, yeah.
And I recognized on air that was inconsistent, and it actually did move my position later when I had more time to think about it.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for telling me, because after 20 years of doing this and getting emails from thousands of people, which I don't have access to, so fuck you, Vern, but getting emails from people, it's very rare that anybody can pinpoint, here's the thing that was said that changed my mind, whether it's about religion or voting or whatever else. Not everybody bothers to do that. And not everybody, I think, even knows. It may just kind of be like, yeah, I just kind of thought about it some more and stuff made more sense this way and didn't make more sense. So it's kind of nebulous. So finding out what I said that was useful, I might repeat it. So thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, it was a good line. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Eve.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right. Final call for this evening, and then we're going to go on to Super Chats. I know we've got Super Chats queued up. Arden, are we doing just everything over 5 for Super Chats for these? Yep. Okay. I see that. All right. Let's hope that George has now pulled his vehicle over to the side of the road and is ready to explain how we're pushing people towards Trump.
Hello?
Hey, George, you're live.
Hey. So, which candidate is going to declare a climate emergency?
I don't know that either candidate's going to declare a climate emergency, but
correct.
Harris at least believes that the climate change is real and is willing to make efforts towards changing it, and Trump called it a hoax.
Those changes are futile. And that's demonstrable. You can check the data. Emissions continue to rise.
George, one candidate believes it's real and is willing to do something. You think that what they're going to do is futile, and the other one thinks it's a hoax. How is that
something you're talking about isn't something at all. It's more of the
George.
Same. You live in a fossil fueled world. Live in a fossil fueled world. You don't have a choice about that.
George, even if neither of them were going to do anything about climate change, wouldn't that then make us move to the next issue where they're different?
That's fine.
Okay.
Because you and all the listeners right now understand what a deep emergency we're in with the climate right now. As I'm speaking, we need to drop everything we're doing. We need a COVID like response to this emergency
George?
we're in. It needs to
George?
be addressed right now.
George?
I'm literally,
George?
yeah.
Here's the question. Of the two candidates, which one is better on climate change? I'm not saying good enough. Which one's better?
Nope, they're both demonstrably bad because you
no
you can check
George
the emissions.
no
The
George
emissions continue to rise,
no George
regardless of the noise.
no okay, I'm going to mute you because I'm tired of having to forcefully talk over you. As a matter of fact, I don't think I'm going to let you speak anymore for the rest of this show. It's a waste of time. The reality is nobody's good on climate change. Oh, you hung up. Okay, well, that's fair. Nobody's good on climate change. We've closed the lines. We'll shut that down. Nobody's doing enough on climate change. Nobody pretty much in the entire world. But if you say that the people who are advocating for some changes and at least acknowledge that it's real are just as bad as the people who want to drill, baby, drill and think that climate change is a hoax, you're an idiot. Like, no mincing words, no playing nice. They are not the same, and they are not having the same consequences. If you want to argue that neither of them are going to be doing enough, cool. I agree. We don't even have to argue it.
Right.
But the reality is, on climate change, they do not have the same positions, and they are not advocating for the same policies. And because of that, irrespective of whether you think it's enough, irrespective of whether you think it's smoke and mirrors, the reality is that one side acknowledges there's a problem and the other one thinks it's a hoax. And so if you have a President Trump, you have zero chance of convincing that administration to enact the sort of emergency measures that you want to see happen for climate change. And with Harris as president, you have a non-zero chance of that. And by definition, that's greater. There's a greater chance. It doesn't matter if it's 1%, 0.5%, 2%. Yes, we live in a fossil fuel world, but that is gradually changing. It's not changing fast enough. There are more electric vehicles on the road now than there were 10 years ago. There are more climate change initiatives in place than there were 10 years ago. Is it too little, too late? Probably. Is it never going to be enough? Probably.
Right.
But at the end of the day, even if they were both absolutely terrible on climate change, okay, put that in the bucket with Gaza and anything else that they might both be terrible on in your view. And then you go to the next thing. So we need like sorting buckets. And we have a bucket where they're better on this issue, a bucket where they're worse on this issue, and a bucket where they're the same on this issue. And take all the issues where you think they're the same, put them in that middle bucket, and move it the fuck out of there because it's irrelevant. If they're the same, and then keep going. And when you get to the other buckets, and by the way, you can say, hey, I value climate change and abortion more than I value gun rights. So, I buy it 3 times more. So we'll put 3 climate change and 3 abortion in there to 1, however you want to do it. But at the end of the day, the bucket that has the most issues that they are better on means that that's the one that is the better option, moving us towards a better world. The perfect is the enemy of the good. If you seek perfection and won't accept anything but perfection, the world will get worse.
Right. Yep.
If you aim for perfection and come up short, you are at least still doing good.
Right. It's so dishonest too to say that they're the same when it comes to climate change, because out of the two of them, which one has even a chance at being convinced to take drastic measures against or to help recognize that climate change even exists? It's not Trump, the one who says it's a hoax. It's just so dishonest to say that they're the same. I don't understand that. There's some other things that you can maybe start saying they're the same on, or it's all politicians or whatever, but not this.
Yeah. Anyway, the Progressive Green New Deal and the Inflation Reduction Act at least contain some things. Is it enough? No. Is it going to fix it? No. there's going to come a day. There's going to come an election. Right now, this is like the most consequential election of our lives is getting ready to take place right now. And we've said that every election for the last, 15 years. And it's been true every time. But before we get to Super Chats, here's the terrible potential truth. It may be absolutely too late to convince the bulk of the world to change what needs to change, if in fact it's possible to change what needs to change, in order to save us from a doomed world for climate change. And if climate change isn't the number one issue for everybody right now, there's going to be a day where climate change will be absolutely everybody's number one issue. There will be a day where it doesn't matter what a candidate's position on abortion is. It doesn't matter what a candidate's position on LGBTQIA issues are. It doesn't matter what candidate's issue on Gaza or Ukraine, Palestine. It doesn't matter what a politician's view on drugs or guns are. It's going to be Mad Max is the future, and we have to do something now. And it would be very nice if when that day shows up, we hadn't already given up to fascists, dictators, and monsters who want to go out obscenely wealthy. If the world's going to burn, at least let me be the last one who can afford air conditioning. That is the mentality for Trump, for Musk. That is the billionaire mindset. And the very sad thing is, the American dream has convinced so many people that they too could be a billionaire if they just, invent Facebook, that they're willing to or in favor of letting it all burn in the hopes that they come out on top amongst the survivors. All of you soldier of fortune, let me buy my survival gear and stock up. You guys were preparing for a different catastrophe than the one that's coming. You should have got some sunblock. And you should have voted in people with sensible, science-based understanding and policies who don't think that climate change is a hoax. Someday we're going to feel silly that we ever had any arguments about anything else. But right now, the practical matter is, if you want to view it as, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils, that's fine. I don't think they're two evils in the sense that I don't think Kamala's evil. Wrong on some things? Yeah. Bad on a couple issues? Yeah. Evil? I don't think so. But if you think so, that's fine. And if you're looking at and saying, well, she's not going to do much better in Gaza, then you're at least acknowledging she would potentially do better. And I don't know why you're not voting for a better world. She would be better potentially on economic issues, on foreign policy issues, on climate change, on abortion, on LGBTQIA issues, on immigration, on law and order, on justice, on equality. She would be better on all of those by almost any measurable standard. And if you're not voting, then okay. I hope to never hear from you again, because if you're not willing to use the voice that you've been given, the privilege that is a functional duty of your citizenship, even though we don't require voting, if you're not willing to make that voice, after this election's over, don't call me for a while. Because if we don't hear from you at the election, I don't need to hear from you afterwards. You definitely don't get to complain. Well, at least I didn't vote for somebody who was supporting a genocide. Ha ha ha. Yeah, you also didn't vote for the person who was willing to protect Roe, who was willing to protect gay people, who was willing to protect science, who was willing to do, yeah. I didn't vote for the bad guy. Yeah, that's because you didn't vote for anybody. Oh, no, I voted for third party. Ha, ha, ha. Congratulations. You and Mickey Mouse are going to save the world. All right. On that note, we have super chats. Huge thank you to our call screener tonight and to our producer, lovely, talented producer, Aron Ra down the hall, ladies and gentlemen. But we've got super chats coming in. You want to start or go second?
Sure. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. So calling in like a man stumbling unannounced off the street is not the way to get a host gig? Writes down, double underline. Thanks, guys. #Dath. Do you know about #Dath?
I do. Don't apologize to him. I think it's fucking awesome.
I agree. Gonna get it tattooed.
Well done. I was queuing these up. Wait, is Arden not producing? It has to be. I can't hear you, honey, if you're saying anything. $5 from Joshua Everett. Yay, use super chats to tell the hosts how awesome they are. Matt, Eve, you are awesome.
Can you hear me
Arden,
now?
you too. Yeah, I hear you now.
Yes.
Okay. My mic came unplugged midway through the show because I'm stupid and didn't pay attention to where my cords were and it fell off the table. So, yeah.
I was just letting you know I'm popping them up.
Yep. I'll take my hands off that.
Sweet.
$5 from Sheridan Bernasconi. The mods are awesome too. Yes. Thank you, mods.
True, Don.
Thanks, Sheridan.
$10 from I Am the Big Cheese. Would love to hear a caller try to argue that Trump is not a racist beyond immigration. Trump holds racist positions and endorses racist candidates and platforms racist public figures. Yeah, I think the trouble for me is
making that argument.
It's really easy to say, oh, Trump's racist. I agree. And it's easy to say that Trump's a liar. I agree. And it's easy to say that Trump is the most absurd and potentially grossly immoral person that's ever been president. I probably agree. I just don't know how effective it is. I mean, who in MAGA is going to stop voting for Trump because they think he's racist? And to whatever extent, and here's part of the problem, is while I think the left is right in saying this is racist, there are things that we know and understand and are quick to identify as racism that the MAGA folks don't think is racist at all. And so if you're like, oh, Trump's racist because he said or did this, and then they just don't grok it. As a matter of fact, I had friends that were like, I'm voting for Trump just because I got called racist when I'm not, which is okay. So first of all, it was like what I thought George was going to do when he's calling in to say that we're pushing people towards Trump. I would have liked for him to actually make the case for it instead of derailing things on climate change and then misrepresenting the fact that they're both the same when they're not. Because if somebody thinks we're pushing people towards Trump, who was not going to vote for Trump, but will, because I advocated for humanism? Who's going to vote for Trump, or who wasn't going to vote for Trump, but is, because I pointed out that throwing away your vote is a waste? I mean, I don't understand the mentality of people who are going to vote for Trump because Eve or I said something against Trump, except for the people who don't believe us. And there's a good chunk of the people on the right who are so steeped in misinformation. Like I had an argument the other day where it was like, people are denying what we've all seen with our own eyes. Our country is being gaslit by the right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we had JD Vance
also
in the
gaslighting
debate
themselves.
he was refusing to answer whether Trump lost the election or not. Just gaslighting everybody on national television.
And Trump is now running around saying that January 6th was a day of love and peace.
That's
fuck you, you
insane.
traitor. Fuck you, you traitor. You can't gaslight me. I watched that. That is not a day of love and peace. It's one thing for you to say, well, it wasn't quite the violent insurrection that the left says. There were some bad apples or whatever else. That would almost be a sensible response. But to say it was a day of love and peace, fuck you, you traitor. I can't wait till you lose and we never have to hear from you again.
Yeah.
Mr. Former
Agreed.
President.
$5 from One-Eyed Heathen. Voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil, but not voting is allowing for a greater evil. I can't fully agree with that, but I do think that not voting is allowing for a greater. I'll agree with that part.
From the perspective of a Christian, if you have God and Satan, who's the lesser evil? God is the lesser evil, according to Christian thinking. Does that mean he's still evil? No, it doesn't. Lesser is the relative term. And if I'm zero evil, I'm lesser than every evil greater than zero.
Right.
Voting for the lesser of two evils is declaring these are both evil. But in reality, and it could be, in reality, what we're really saying is neither of these are ideal. One of them's problematic. One of them's more or less problematic. Framing it as, oh, you're still voting for evil. Yes. Congratulations. Thank you for your high horse. I will always be voting for evil because there's no option on the ballot that's not evil. That in that kind of gross oversimplification. But the lesser evil is still, as One-Eyed Heathen correctly points out, not voting, not supporting the lesser evil allows for the greater evil. $5 for Monkey Typewriter. Robert, if we could transplant a fetus, but is it different if we use the transporter to move the fetus? What if you're infected with a xenomorph?
Oh,
that's the other thing.
Great.
Would we be able to remove, like you'd think the transporter would be able to solve so many medical problems. And I know they use it that way on occasion, but you know, I got bit by a bug and there's a little rash there. And it may be that it like planted little bugs underneath my skin. Wouldn't the transporter be able to pull those little bugs out and leave me just fine? I would think so.
$5 from Capitan Crimp. Robert has called Jimmy Snow before. He seems like a bad faith actor who just seeks to waste your time. I would exit the conversation. I think that conversation ended up going not bad at all, though. That must have been sent probably in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's fine. A lot of things you don't necessarily know where it's going to go, and there's a lot of frustration. Yeah. I'm trying a lot of different ways of addressing some things. We'll see if anybody notices. We'll see if it's effective. We'll see how long I can maintain certain things. But I don't think people realize just how weirdly frustrating it is to wake up every day and have the same ridiculous claims shoved in your face for 8 hours. Oh, and then come do a show about it. $5 from Julia Scala. Oh my God, you should try to explain bodily autonomy with xenomorphs from the Alien movies. That's actually
you guys are all on the same page.
Really good. And it's yeah, I think you probably would get somebody there who would be like, well, now we're going to prioritize human life. Because, oh my God, Julia, you just opened a can of worms. Oh, a can of soybeans. Because if veganism is the opposition to doing unnecessary harm to other living things, then if you got taken over by a xenomorph, vegans would be opposed to you removing it. By killing it, I guess. But
we could go so many places with that. $4.99 from Aron and Ray Economics. I agree that it's not okay to force someone to remain pregnant. Why is it okay to force someone to pay your student debts?
Who got forced to pay someone's student debts? I'm not aware of that ever happening. The reality of student loan forgiveness is that the loans have in fact been paid for with interest, and all we're doing is forgiving all the extra interest that is driving the industry. Nobody was forced to pay student loan debts. Now, we all pay taxes into the system, and a lot of that money goes for all kinds of things. It goes towards Medicare, goes towards highways. It would be very cool if you could go through when you submitted your taxes and say, I'm willing for my tax money to go to this, but not this. But it's completely impractical. That is the wrong end of the dog to be trying to wag. So yeah, people aren't forced to pay someone else's student debts. But there are scholarships for the arts and things that can come from taxes, which means my money is going to go to pay some of my tax money is going to go towards someone getting a degree in the arts. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And if you're not, okay, elect people that want to send your tax money in a different direction. Is this you or me?
Is this one? Oh, I'll take it. $10 from Michael. I think you solidly pushed Robert in the right direction, but even if you didn't, I bet a kidney some minds were changed from watching that conversation. Yeah, I hope so. I think it started going better.
Yep. And it's basically things get better when I stop talking and let Eve take over.
No, that's not true. And we say the same thing.
I have a shorter
anyways.
I have a shorter fuse, but I think between the two of us, once you get started on a particular line of thought, it prompts me to think of a better question to ask. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I do all the shows with Eve from now on, Arden? Can we arrange that? $5 from Doom Degree 25. Skepticism. Oh, you switched the C and the S there. Skepticism. I wonder why my Wi-Fi is running slow. Conspiracy. The CIA is bogging down my Wi-Fi with their particle beams to turn everyone transgender. Yes.
That
is a
like
close enough approximation.
Yeah. $10 from Mo Scoville. Can I interest you in the chicken, or would you prefer the platter of shit with bits of broken glass in it? To be undecided in this election is to ask how the chicken is cooked.
Yes.
That's great. That is really good.
I think one of my favorite memes I saw is three characters from Handmaid's Tale sitting there, and one of them's looking at the other one, and they're like, "I'm sorry, I just wasn't sure she really worked at McDonald's."
It's funny, and then it's not at all.
$20 from Jupiter Quake. I know at least one issue that's creating fence sitters: trans rights. I've been a trans advocate forever, and this morning I heard both trans people don't deserve to pee, nope, no sports, and attack helicopter bingo. Yeah, it is. I think, by the way, everybody should tune in and watch the Transatlantic Call-In show, but Arden played me a clip from Tim Walz actually answering this question and doing so better than almost anybody else has done, which caught me a little bit by surprise because I loved him, but I don't know him incredibly well on his issues. He seems to be like he's almost a dream. There's a couple things about him that I'm not as keen on, but generally speaking, he's a dream. But he answered this question about trans rights issues by basically rightfully calling out the right or using this marginalized minority as their boogeyman, as, oh, this is where they're going to put the blame on this when these are just people who want to live their lives, have basic human rights, be treated decently and with respect, and largely be left alone. Now, I'm not trans, and I'm not going to get everything right, but I'd be willing to bet significant money that the overwhelming majority of trans people would be much happier if nobody ever talked about trans people again. Like if we just gave them their rights, all got on with our lives, and stopped worrying about whether or not somebody was assigned a particular gender at birth, what their chromosomes are, what their genitalia are, whether or not, they switch pronouns. Generally speaking, there's not a trans community with an agenda to like make you cis people eat shit. They just want to live and not have to explain who they are and give excuses and marginalize their own thoughts and feelings and what they can contribute to society because you're afraid they might come into the bathroom with you. Stop using people who are already oppressed as the target of your big red herring to avoid responsibility for the fact that you only have a concept of a plan instead of a plan.
Oof. Well said. $10 from History Buff. Eve, your reference to April's book last week was monumental. After 20 years, her voice fractured the weld that held my mom's Christianity to Republicans and Christian nationalism. Thank you. That is so awesome. If you guys are curious what book that is, it's my friend April just came out with a book called Star Spangled Jesus. And April's still a Christian, but this book is absolutely incredible. And I think it's a really cool resource to have to give to your Christian friends that talks about Christian nationalism and Christianity and all of that. So I'm really happy to hear that that was helpful.
$10 from W-Man. I feel like the reason some people don't vote is because too many of them have the I'm just one person, what's one vote going to change mindset. Yeah. And you can occasionally go through and show where just a small handful of votes has made a big difference. You can also show where somebody won the popular vote but lost the electoral vote. You can show all the problems, and the problems with the system kind of reinforce this idea of, hey, it's one vote. But that's why I keep harping on what would the world be like if everybody took the step that I'm about to take? And if everybody took the step of voting, then we'd have a government that is and voting responsibly and reliably. We'd have a government that better represents the thoughts and values of the people that are voting. Actually, it's always going to represent the thoughts and values of the people that are voting, but the more people who vote, the more it represents the thoughts and values of the society as a whole, instead of 30% of the people feeling disenfranchised to the point where they don't vote, which just disenfranchises them further.
Is this on me? $5 from Equinox 2149. Dear protest voters, your sanctimonious grandstanding means nothing. Yeah, that is pretty much what it means, is a lot of nothing.
Yeah, all you protest voters, as my Lord and Savior Chapel Roan would say, good luck, babe.
we love some Chapel Roan.
$10 from Ross Settles. I look forward to sharing the clips from tonight. I have an anarchist friend that doesn't want to soil their left purity by voting for a Democratic. Clips from the line may help. I hope so, because
awesome.
At the end of the day, people are going to vote or not in whatever way they decide to vote. I mean, that's just, hey, Matt, throw out a tautology and make it sound like it's impressive. It's not. But if you have people whose criteria for voting is, oh, I'm only going to not do that. Maybe the left can start lobbying for that hipster vote, but honestly, I'm hoping that there's not enough of them actually voting to make any real difference that way either. But $5 Canadian from Cassius. Matt, is there value or harm in American politics in making an election a single issue election, such as women's rights, bodily rights? Not necessarily. Generally speaking, I'm not a single issue voter. I tend to look at, there are deal breakers. I think that's probably what really happens is I would vote for a worse economy if it meant better social rights, because my priorities are more towards social rights. I would vote for a much worse economy if it meant we were prioritizing climate change initiatives and working to, extend our time here. And so it doesn't have to be just a single issue, but I'm lucky in the sense that when I look at the full list of positions, there's not a single issue. Like if I go through the list at a number of different websites, I've got one in front of me here that lists the difference between Harris and Trump on January 6th, on their thoughts on the 2020 election, on economy, housing, Social Security, taxes, trade, education, student loan debt, China, Israel, Gaza, NATO, U.S. alliances, Ukraine, abortion, Affordable Care Act, climate change, crime, federal workforce, immigration, marijuana, transgender rights, TikTok. It was a pretty good list. And as I went through it, I didn't find a single issue that I thought Trump was better on than Harris. I will say that's not always true. In the past, and not just when I was a dumbass Rush Limbaugh ditto head, but in past elections, I could easily look and say, man, there are things that I really like about John McCain and agree with, but not enough to make me vote for him. There are lots of things that I like Mitt Romney, and I agree with Mitt Romney on a couple of things. There are plenty of things where I disagree with Kamala Harris, but I also disagree with Trump's position on those things as well. And so if I'm going to disagree with both of them, that's the same as me agreeing with both of them. Those things get put in the does not matter category. And when I look at the rest of them, it's like that. I think there can be a problem, but it's very rare that any of these issues are truly single issues. Like women's rights, bodily autonomy, you can talk about that with respect to abortion, but the foundational principles are one of bodily autonomy and sovereignty. And that goes way beyond abortion. That goes, we're going to be coming up on issues with like cloning. Do you own your DNA? Can somebody clone you? Can they take your DNA and propagate it into an entirely new person? What rights do you have in a changing landscape online? How do you protect the things that you create from being misused by machine learning AI stuff? There are real issues that are tied to the foundational principles of how we identify who a person is and what rights they have to self-governance. And so it's very rarely a single issue. But if it is a single issue for somebody, I think the fact that, they still get to vote that way. And hopefully it's very rare that the person who agrees with you on your one single issue is also monumentally wrong on all kinds of other things that are going to lead the world to destruction. But it might happen. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Good, because I was saying that wrong anyways. $10 from Mr. Boracoa, I think. Great show tonight. Boricua, thank you. A few great calls with 2 converts. As for the dishonest callers, especially Robert, Ohio, your gross, dangerous dishonesty is showing you might want to do something about it. Did we have 2 Roberts tonight? Is that what it was?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We had back-to-back Roberts.
Yes.
$5 from Winter Scoop. Thank you, Nebraska Supreme Court, for ruling that felons that are done with their sentences are now fully able to vote. Really?
That's cool.
I hope that happened recently. It's funny that it's really easy for some of my more right-leaning friends to be like, oh, felons, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. Oh, but you should be allowed to be president?
Right.
I think one of my favorite things I saw somebody do is they were basically asking questions. I don't know if they went quite as far as I would have, but they were asking questions about immigration of people. And it would be like, so you're opposed to immigrants coming over here. What if they were like good immigrants who were like a doctor and they were coming over here to, be a productive member of society, but they just didn't use the right legal method of doing it. And the person was like, they shouldn't be here either. They need to go through the proper channels. Okay. But what if somebody wants to go through the proper channels, but they have been found liable for sexual assault? No. Okay, what if they've just racked up a bunch of felony counts? Oh, no, they shouldn't be allowed in here, but you're okay with someone with that record being president. Oh, well, that's different. That's a weaponizing of the justice system and blah, 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 blah. It's just funny watching them make up loopholes.
Yep.
For loopy.
Yeah.
$7 Canadian, which I'm told is real money despite my concerns. From Andrea B79, Eve making the best points for millions of women in their rights. Facts. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much. $5 from Aaron H. The secret to making government more effective is electing all horses. Sure, they'll always vote nay, but at least the housing market will stabilize. Wow, that's good.
Oh, Aaron. Aaron, thank you. Thank you for
Thanks,
the
Aaron.
puns. I'm a pun fan. $5 from Julia Scala. Again, in Florida, BNC took our primary away and did not get to vote for a presidential candidate and assigned the delegates to Biden. I think you might mean DNC, but yeah, there were primary concerns, but at that point, we still thought Joe was going to win or be running.
$9.99 from LA Silver Surfers. Thank you. And that was really easy to read, so that's nice.
$5 Canadian from David Haxor. Single issue voters drive me crazy. I think you'll find, I'd be willing to bet that fewer people are single issue voters than anybody thinks, and then most people will. Most people who say they're a single issue voter are probably not being accurate. It's just that one is so much more important than the rest of them, and it allows them. It allows them to get some cover. Let's imagine that you are opposed to immigrants coming over at all, and you really don't like trans people, and you are sick to death of the woke left and 15 million genders and all this stuff. The easiest thing you can do is say, I don't have a problem with any of that stuff, but I'm a single issue voter and I just got to go with the candidate that's opposed to abortion. That's just my personal deep conviction, and I just got to do that. And you can be a big old fucking liar and do that. And because of that, I think there's a lot of people that do exactly that. They're not willing to tell you who they really are, because they know that once they tell you who they really are, you're going to believe it, and it's going to change your perception of them. So in the same way that third-party candidates can make any promise they want because they know they will never, ever be in a position to have to be held accountable for why they did or did not meet their campaign promises. These people are leeches, in many cases, on the electoral system because they're just sustaining themselves off of donations to run for something that they can't possibly win. And I know some of them are doing it because, I want to keep my personal issue in the forefront. Great. That's fine all the way through the primaries. Now, Jill Stein, sit down and shut up. Did he just tell a woman to sit down and shut up? Yeah, but I didn't do it because she's a woman. I did it because she's a third-party spoiler.
$4.99 from Carla J. Progress, not perfection. No one is perfect. That's why I'm a progressive. Thanks, Matt, Eve, Arden, and everyone else at the line. Thanks, Carla.
I don't know what you mean by not everybody's perfect. Some of us are, well. $10 from Mr. Boricua. The billionaire mindset is absolutely a fuck you, I got mine mindset. Yeah, very infuriating. People genuinely behave in such a way as if it were the default. Bugger off with these wastes of space time. Yeah, if you watch the other night, it was last night, I think it was, that Forrest and Owen, great job. I don't watch everything that goes on the line because I have other things to do, but I watch a lot of what goes on the line. I like watching. Don't tell her at all, but I occasionally do find myself watching chewed gum and enjoying it. But I watched last night. I watched last night's show with Forrest and Owen, and you guys did great. But there was an individual that came on last night that was very much an Elon Musk simp. Like, his number one issue was Elon's going to take us to Mars and Trump will make that more likely to happen. Hey, the only reason that I have any interest in getting to Mars is because we might destroy Earth. Right. In the meantime, how quick Elon Musk does or doesn't get us to Mars, because it ain't Elon. Elon's not Einstein. Eli's the guy that hired and exploits Einstein. But to whatever extent we get to Mars, I don't think who ends up as president in this next term is going to have a significant impact on whether or not Musk continues moving forward on a project to get to Mars. But even if it does, I'll throw away a trip to Mars in the Billionaire Boys Club if it means we can feed more people, if we can keep more people safe, if we can help get people medical treatment they need, if we can do something to stop the climate change trend. Yeah, fuck Mars. The mentality of that is like, I really want to go to Mars. What are you, 5?
Yeah.
You're
That's
voting in
wild.
this election based on who you think is likely to get you to Mars? Fuck. If you just vote for Kamala Harris, I will go and lobby Elon to see if he'll put you on the first shuttle to Mars because I don't want you on my planet anymore. $10 from Second Son of Jim. Vote blue. Thanks, Jim.
$4.99 from Apostate Paul. Matt, YGH? What is that?
You're gay, homie.
Oh, amazing. Wow. Eve, I have no idea what endearing insult I can throw at you without hurting you. The logic will be with you both, always us. I know the insults, I know like the go fuck yourself, Jimmy. I know that's like this like inside joke that like means a sweet thing, but it still pains me every time I read people like insulting others. I don't know why. It's my little sensitivity.
I get it. It's kind of the same thing that I have with and other people as well. There are some people who prefer its pronouns, and that always just like it's physically difficult for me to force myself to do it. I will do it on occasion. And luckily, almost all the people I know who prefer its pronouns are generally fine with they, them, or other options because they understand that for some people, this is a little bit of roadblock and has nothing to do with disrespect or denial or that. But on the other hand, I know some people who are in that boat who aren't going to be voting for the candidates that are doing everything in their power to protect their preferred pronouns and their right to identify, because anybody that's okay with Trump getting in doesn't understand that Trump's position is to make it such that there are only 2 genders. And Trump's is opposed to expanding transgender rights. And by the way, that's going to include, everybody, non-binary folks as well. He thinks that Biden's Title IX expansion is insane and it's going to destroy women's sports. He's vowed to use federal power to try to stop gender-affirming care for minors, which he equates with child abuse, to impose severe consequences for teachers who discuss transitioning with students, and discouraging the promotion of gender transitioning for Americans of any age. And during his previous term, Trump's administration considered officially defining gender as an immutable biological condition determined from birth, which would make it impossible for people to change gender in the eye of the law. It's like night and day. And I don't understand how a trans person can decide not to vote or to vote third party when one of 2 people is going to get elected and one of them is going to be supportive of your rights and identity, and the other one is going to destroy any hope you have of having protections on that rights and identity. It's a big deal, but I'm not the only person that gets to decide, or if we did, fuck it, I'd be president. I'm not qualified in the sense that I don't know enough, but I would at least hire the right cabinet to make the right decisions. Oh, is this one you?
I think this one's you. I was struggling with the last one.
$5 to Tim Gill. Just couldn't leave Monkey at typewriter carrying the network with super chats. That's
Thanks,
fair.
Tim.
Thank you so much for giving
$5
our regulars
from
a bit
Steve
of a break.
Button. I've never volunteered for a political campaign before, but at 43 years old, that will change Thursday when I knock on doors in Maine for Harris. Love it. It's awesome.
It took me a long time to truly get involved in politics. Even when I was a Rush Limbaugh ditto head, I frequently didn't even vote. Which is probably good.
Yeah. And you know what? Steve, doing that is a lot more than not voting as a protest. That's accomplishing a lot more than that. So,
yeah. And as a matter of fact, for all of you people who have a third party candidate that you really like, go support them. Go, it's all fine during the primaries and everything else, and support them right up until the point where they are no longer a viable option. And then give your support to the viable option that is closest to the values that you're trying to gain.
Yeah.
$10 from SJL. I voted third party in 2016. I'm in Massachusetts, so I knew a Dem win was near certainty. I've regretted it since days after the election. It was a you can't blame me vote, and it was stupid. Yeah, been there. You got it, though. And lesson learned. Thanks, SJL.
$10 from Jupiter Quake. Do you think that if Trump wins, Kamala's life will be in danger? I mean, her life is already in danger. She's a presidential candidate and vice president. Do I think it would be more in danger if Trump wins? Well, yeah, because then she'll be president, which I think puts your life at risk more. You don't think so?
No, he's saying they're saying if Trump wins.
Oh, Trump wins. Sorry, you're right. I got that wrong.
Will Kamala's life be in danger?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say as a woman, possibly, and as a person of color in the U.S., like when somebody like that is president, inciting all sorts of harmful rhetoric, she, along with a lot of us, will be more at risk.
her life will be more in danger along with everybody else's. But her life will be more in danger once she is Madam President, just because there's not a bigger target you can paint on someone than being president of the United States. And when you add to that it is the first woman president of the United States and a mixed race woman as president of the United States, you have hatred from so many different sources that it will make, that'll be the riskier scenario. I think what Jupiter Quake's alluding to is when Trump's like, we'll have to take care of the enemy from within. And maybe if he's elected, he goes after all of his political opponents. If she decides to stay in politics and run against him again in 4 years, she could be in danger there as well. But generally speaking, I think if Trump wins, he'll know that barring them doing something just absolutely bizarre, it'll be his last 4 years as president. And honestly, I think his ego is going to make him do one or two things. Work towards finding a way to never stop being president, or ensuring that when he's spoken about by historians, that they can do some revisionist history in order to make him look better. And so I genuinely think that if Trump is elected, he'll probably cause less problems than he's normally prone to, if for no other reason, so he can be saying, see, they said it was going to be terrible, but it's not, in order to try to spin how he's remembered. But that's like just a gut feel with nothing else to go on it. He could turn into the world's worst dictator and cause nuclear war. Who knows?
I think this is you.
$5 from Empress Lizard. Third-party voters should start smaller and build up a third party in their state representatives first, the presidential and the general election. Go support your third-party people. As long as they're a viable candidate, or there's a hope of making them a viable candidate, do it. That's the way, because the fantasy of, there are enough people who think like me for this to be viable, that's something you have to work for. It doesn't just happen, and throwing away protest vote after protest vote is not going to make it happen. Do you think anybody looking back, like I went and looked up the statistics on third party stuff just the other day. Most people aren't going to go back and look at third party stuff and be like, oh, you know what? Hey, the third party got close here. Like it's 1%, 1%, 1%, 2%. You're statistical outliers. There's no reason for the parties to take any notice of the statistical outliers. The people who vote for Jill Stein or Cornel West are indistinguishable from the people who don't vote at all from the standpoint of political strategists. Political strategists are not trying to woo the atheist vote. This is something that happened many years ago. The president of American Atheists at the time, Ellen Johnson, was at the Godless Americans March on Washington and stood up and told people to hold their vote hostage and to not vote for any candidate that did not pay attention to our issues, atheist issues. And so don't vote until they earn your vote. And when she said it, I immediately called for her resignation and for her to be fired. Now, nobody paid any attention to me, but I don't want the leader of an atheist organization saying, don't vote. You should absolutely do everything in your power to make sure that secular issues are addressed. We have lobbyists. We have people who are working on these issues all the time. But we're not a unified voting bloc. We are not a hive mind. And what Ellen was kind of trying to do is to pretend that we were. To say,
right,
you can come get the secular vote. Well, you can't. And you can't come get the Jewish vote. And you can't come get the Baptist vote. But you can get good chunks of it. But if you're willing to withhold your vote because your personal top two issues weren't addressed properly, you're accomplishing nothing. And you are throwing away the only thing that you may be able to do about it. It's your chance to participate. A lot of people view the government as us and them. Sorry, go ahead, Arden.
I messaged you on Discord, but we had like 3 come in over the course of that one. So can we move a little faster, please? I love you.
Arden's like, I'm ready. Is this one mine?
Yeah.
Okay. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. For the Musk Sims, you do know it's a 3-year one-way trip with a launch windows like once every 20 years. Space is big, y'all. Good show, y'all. Yeah. That's where we can send the undecided voters, I guess. They can, the ones that are Musk Sims, they can go to Mars and not vote there, I guess.
Yeah, and you can convince them really easily by saying men are from Mars, go back. Because it's only going to be dudes. $5 from Hipster Doofus. Human rights should be the priority when picking a candidate. Bodily autonomy is all-encompassing. I don't get how autonomy is seen as gendered. Well, I don't look at it as gendered, but
yeah, I don't think it is. $20 from Rex Betancourt. If Republicans are followers of Jesus, then why are they not humanists instead of being for corporations?
Oh, followers of Jesus aren't humanists.
Yeah.
I mean, I get kind of what you're trying to do there, Rex, but Jesus wasn't a humanist. Well, right. Jesus wasn't.
Thank you, Rex.
But $5 from KDP. Eve, thank you for being you. Sweet, but a force to be reckoned with. And thank you, Matt, for the infinite wisdom. Love you all. Thanks so much, Katie.
Thanks,
I'm going as fast as I can, but we're just getting more and more super chats, which is fine.
$4.99 from Hipster Doofus. Also, why the hell is there not more excitement for the first female president? Oh yeah, misogyny. I'm such a silly-headed girly. I think that is, but I also think that part of it is, which I find refreshing to not even, we don't even need to focus on that part. I think that will be the celebration for so many of us when hopefully she wins. But
I think the reason there's not as much excitement for it is because this race is way too close. And we all got excited for the first female president in 2016, and it didn't happen. And so we're being cautioned, a little more reserved. $5 from Thomas Forsyth. I'm right of center. Well, I'm sorry, we can fix that. But voting for Harris is a lot easier when you look at Donald Trump, Jill Stein, and Cornel West. Fair. You can stay right of center. As long as you do the right thing in addition to the right thing.
Yeah. $5 from Jeffrey Phillips. Why is non-battleground states vote not a wasted one?
Why is non-battleground state vote not a wasted vote? So one of the things is that in Texas, Trump's probably going to win. Trump's almost certainly going to win. Question then becomes, can Colin Allred, who I'm supporting, beat Ted Cruz? And the answer is probably not. But there were some polls. There was at least one poll that had Colin Allred ahead. That has since changed. I think Ted Cruz now has a 4 or 6 point lead. And it got people excited. And I was excited. I liked listening to Colin Allred. I'll be voting for him and everything else. But in order for Colin to win, you have to think who's going to go into the ballot and vote for Trump, but also vote for Colin Allred. That is an unlikely and seemingly minuscule part of the vote. And because of that, either Texas goes blue or Trump and Cruz are likely to win. And so if you want to look at Texas as not a battleground state, you'd be right. It's probably not. Trump's probably going to win and Cruz is probably going to win. But if there's good enough turnout, Texas has been blue and gone blue in the past on a number of different things. So you're not always sure whether or not you're in a battleground state. So if you think you're in a non-battleground state, you are still letting people know, A, we participated here. You're letting them know how close some elections and some future elections are likely to be to allow them to figure out where they need to spend money on marketing in the future. Because if it's if nobody turns up because they think it's completely a blue state, no red voters show up. And if nobody shows up in a red state, none of the blue voters show up because they feel it's futile, then they're not telling anyone that they're there. And so votes in non-battleground states are like, hey, I'm still here. And when enough people are there, that's when they can start potentially putting money into the system and finding weak spots in order to promote. So battleground, there's a reason we don't make the president based on the polls. We do it, unfortunately, from the Electoral College after the voting. But polls don't decide the election, but they can influence it, which is kind of unfair.
Yeah. $4.99 from Willie Pepito Jr. I'm sorry I'm new. Do you believe in freedom of choice? Also, do you believe in conservation of life?
I believe in freedom of choice and I believe in conservation of life, but I'm not sure what you mean by either of those. So my answers
these are very vague.
may not match what you're thinking. But on that note, huge thank you to everybody for tuning in. It's been a while. I don't do a lot of Because I Wanted, but I had a blast on this. Thank you so much, Eve, for hanging out with me this evening. To Arden for producing, our call screeners and moderators in chat. Please register and please vote. And please don't throw your vote away. And if you think you're in a non-battleground state, participating in the system is still important because there's a lot of tickets beyond the president, beyond the Senate, beyond the House of Representatives that you need to participate in, including your local elections and running for office there. Go to linemerch.com. You can click like and subscribe, and you can go to patreon.com/calltheline for more information on how to support us here. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the Sunday show.